Next.js 13 is the latest version of Next.js, and in this 3-hour course, I'm going to teach you everything you need to know to start on this amazing framework. If you want to know what you are going to learn in this course, we are going to pass through all the basics of Next.js 13, and at the end of this course, you will be able to code your own application. So if you are ready, let's go. Thank you for watching and please subscribe. Hello everybody and welcome to this new course about Next.js, the JavaScript framework to create front-end application made by Vercel on top of React. In this video, I'm going to explain to you and to show you how to create a front-end application with Next.js, and stay until the end because I'm going to give you some advice, some tips and some accounts to follow and keep in touch with everything that is new about Next.js. Alright, if you go on nextjs.org, you arrive on the official website of Next.js. And recently, the new version, the version 13, introduced a new way of doing a front-end application with Next.js, okay? So basically, Next is built on top of React, and it is written in here. So I'm going to go directly on Get Started. And here I got a quick introduction on what is Next.js. If you don't know it, you can read it. I'm going to click on installation and there we go. So here on the top left, we see that we got a toggle and we can use either the app router or the page router. So let me give you a quick explanation about this. The app router has been introduced in the version 13 of Next.js. So by the time I'm doing this video, it's 2023. And we've got the version 13, and before we used to use the pages router, so the version below the version 13. This entire course is going to be about Next.js 13, okay? So if you want to switch, on the documentation, you can also click here and you see it is changing here, the menu. All right, there we go. So I got my, of course, I got my VS Code running right here. And I'm going to simply copy paste this code that I have here. And I already see that when I try to install Next.js, I got a lot of questions asked. So we're going to try right now. So I'm going to copy paste this command in here. And I'm going to zoom maybe a little bit. And I'm going to enter this code, and here we see that I need to install the Create Next app. And there we go. So what is the project name? So here I can put Next.js 13 course. There we go. I'm going to type enter. And here it's asking me if I want to use TypeScript. So it's up to you. Me, I'm going to use TypeScript probably all along those courses. So I'm going to type on yes. Am I using ESLint? Yes, I will use ESLint because I want to correct all my code. So I'm going to type yes. If I want to use Tailwind, so this is brand new. This is something that I like a lot. Is that me as a front-end developer, I'm using Tailwind a lot. So basically right now I got the option immediately when I set up my application to say, hey, I'm going to use Tailwind or no. So let's say that I'm going to say yes. And after that, it's asking me if I want to use the source directory, because basically you could have also your files out at the root of your project or inside a source directory. For some reasons, you would like to have a source directory. Me, I'm going to say yes, and there we go. Suddenly, I got another question, which is, would you like to use the app router? And the app router, remember, if we come back here, we see here, this is the option for Next 13, right? So what I'm going to do, I'm going to say, yes, I want to use the app router, and I want to customize the default import alias. I don't want to do it, sorry, for now. Probably I will come back on that later. So I'm going to click on no, and we've got something that is installing, not something, actually, the CLI that is installing Next.js right away. And we see that Next.js to run needs React, React DOM, Next, of course, TypeScript, because I mentioned TypeScript. It got the type and Tailwind CSS, Post CSS, and ESLint. So we're going to wait that it's installed. And there we go. I got Next.js installed. Now I'm going to open my folder. Once your project is created, you can enter into your folder, and let's have a quick look at the architecture of a Next.js project. So we basically have the node modules. So the node modules, you are not going to touch them. They are here actually to make Next.js running. Then you got a public folder. And in here we see that we got two SVG. We got the next SVG. So we already understand that this SVG is basically the logo that we're going to use probably into our application or not. And we've got the Vercel logo. So Vercel is the company that is making Next.js. All right. Then we got the source folder, and inside we got the whole application, right? Source, under this we got an app folder. Okay, then we got the ESLint RC-JSON with all the configuration of ESLint. We've got our gitignore. We've got the types, the next.d.ts, which are for the types of TypeScript. And we've got this file called next.config.js. So basically in here, we are able to configure how Next.js is going to behave inside the application. Then we got the package.json, the package.json with all the scripts, the dependency, the postcss.config.ts because I installed Next.js with that, the README, and we've got also the tailwind.config.js. So for those who don't know Tailwind, I got a whole course on my channel where you can go to look at how we can use Tailwind to give style to our application. And finally, the ts config.json. So the first thing we're going to do, we are going to type npm run dev, and npm run dev, it's supposed to be the command to run your project locally. So I'm going to type enter, and then we see that it's going to run our application locally. So as we see right now, we see that we've got our server running, and our server is displaying actually Next.js. So up here, we see that we got a new folder called .next, and inside we see here that we got probably, and for sure, this is the build of our application. And when I go on localhost 3000, what I got is basically the application, and we see that it's written get started by editing source app.page.tx. Okay. So right now our application is running. What I'm going to do, I'm going to actually stop my server and I'm going to delete this .next folder. And what I want to show you at first is to type npm run build. Okay, I want to see what is the actually the production build. And of course, this is exactly the same as the one that has been created before to run the project. So every time we type next dev, it's going to build our project and to display it. And we see that during the build, there's some kind of steps that are passed, right? It's first creating an optimized production build, compiled successfully. It's going to link and checking validity of types because we are on TypeScript, and it's collecting the page data. So we're going to see later what's really happening in here with collecting the page data, but we already understand that it's building something static, and we can see it here, generating static page 4-on-4. Finalizing page optimization, and we see here that we got the name of the chunks that have been created. So we got a root app and a root pages. And it's weird because we don't necessarily understand why we'd have app and pages. We're going to see that later. So we see here all the details. We haven't seen the size of the files. And what we're going to do, we're going to click here on .next, and suddenly we see that the folder has more file than previously. We've got a cache folder. So if we look at it a little bit, we've got some weird files for us. If you don't know anything at first, we got some also GZ files. We got a server production, etc., etc. We got pages, and we see that we have this app.js file. There is a static one. So in the static, it's exactly the same. We got the layout and stuff. We see that it's unreadable for us, okay? It's just a big folder containing a lot of file statics. And we got the CSS also that is compiled. And we've got the type that are here, the layout and the page. So we see that Next.js has built all these files to get the latest, the last actually version of our application. So we are going to come back to this build folder later in the course to explain everything about what it does when we build a Next.js application and how to debug, troubleshoot when we got problem in production. Okay, so now we need to run again our application. So here I'm going to type yarn dev and my application will run again. And I'm not going to change anything for now. I'm going to change it later. If you want to take a look at it, you can probably look at all the code that has been generated when I created the app. And basically, if you did some Tailwind by the past, you would recognize the classes and you would recognize also that we are on HTML inside a TS6 file, because TS6 it's actually TypeScript JS6 basically. So we've got all of this in here. I'm not going to touch it. We've got our application running. We are ready to follow the entire course. But before, I want to give you some tips and some accounts to follow to keep in touch with the latest features and the latest versions and also the best practice of Next.js. If you got Twitter and if you want to follow the latest developer news and the latest versions of Next.js, the improvement, the best practice, etc., I highly recommend you to follow Lee Robinson. So Lee Robinson is the VP of Developer Experience at Vercel. I already had a chat with him. He's a very, very nice guy. He's giving a lot of news about Next.js, and he's also, of course, working on the development of Next.js at Vercel. So if you follow his Twitter, you will find a lot of good tips, a lot of good news about Next.js. And he's also got a twitch.tv where you can look at, where he's often developing on Next.js. In the same team as Lee Robinson, there is Hassan El-Mghari. He's a senior developer advocate at Vercel. He created some very nice stuff with AI and Next.js. In the same team, we've got also Stephen T. And Stephen T, or Tay, sorry if I misspell your name, Stephen. But here, it's also a developer that is working on Next.js. He's got very, very good insight about Next.js. And he's also using Next.js to create products. He created a product called dub.sh. Very nice one, a very nice account to follow also. Of course, Vercel has its own YouTube channel, and I really recommend you to go and subscribe. You will find Lee on the channel that is making videos, but also other personalities, very nice personalities that are explaining to you every day what they try to put into the new version of Next.js to improve the developer experience. And you will also see that there is the CEO, Guillermo Roche, I don't know, that is present, that is making videos. So I highly recommend you to go and subscribe to this channel. The last tip I wanted to give you is to follow a newsletter, and this is probably the best newsletter I've found this year. It's called Next.js Weekly. Next.js Weekly, it's a newsletter that has been created by Erfan. Erfan is also on Twitter. You can go and follow him. He's writing a newsletter about Next.js every week, and he's giving tips about all the latest news about Next.js. So as you see, I'm on my Gmail account, and I've been following this newsletter since April. I think the number one was before April. I don't know, but we are on August right now, and there's already 18 newsletter written, sorry. So if you click on this, you can look. There's a lot of very interesting news about Next.js, the community. You got package, tools, and repositories. You got also jobs. Well, this is the best for me, the best newsletter about Next.js, and it's made by Erfan. All right, our application is ready. We have everything set up. Let's continue to learn how to develop a front-end application with Next.js 13. In this video, I'm going to show you how to deploy your Next.js 13 application on Vercel. And first, what we're going to do, we are going to clean a little bit this application that is running on localhost 3000. So if I come back to my project in here, I got my layout that is displaying my body. And here I got this home component, which is the page.tsx, which is the root of my application. This is the first page, the home page, that is going to be displayed through the layout, but we are going to see that later. And I got a lot of code, and I got mainly some Tailwind CSS code. So I'm going to run this. I'm going to type hello world instead of everything that I got. I'm going to probably remove this, and I'm just going to put this main that we've got in here. Okay, so if I come back to the app, what's happening in here? We got the black background with hello world that is here. All right, so what I'm going to do is that I'm going to get back and I'm going to go on Vercel.com. Vercel.com is the company that is actually maintaining and working on Next.js 13, right? So here on Vercel, you can deploy your application. So you are going to click on login, and if you don't have an account, you are going to create one. Once you're logged in, you arrived on the dashboard of Vercel, and if you don't have any project, you should have a message saying that you have to create one project. And here we see that I already got one project from a previous video that I made on Superbase with Next.js. Okay, so here I'm on my account, so Guillaume Durand. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to click here on Add New. And when I click on Add New, I can have several options. What I want to do is add a new project. So if I click on Project, what's happening in here is that it's going to look at all my project linked to my GitHub account. So right now, this project is not on GitHub. I have to push it first on my GitHub. Then I will be able to retrieve it here and import it. All right, on GitHub, I'm going to create a new repository name, which will be here Next.js 13 course. There we go. And it's going to be public. I'm going to click on Create Repository. And once my repository has been created, what I can do is I can add all the files that I got here. So I'm going to stop and type git add. Okay, git init first. And then git add. And then I'm going to push all of the project to the repository. If I come back to GitHub and I update, here I'm supposed to have all the project. And there we go, I can come back on Vercel and deploy my application. Back on Vercel, we see that I got my project, which is here, Next.js 13 course. I'm going to click on Import. And here I got several options. It's asking me for several options. Now that we know that Vercel made Next.js 13, we could think that we have some configuration to do. Actually, we don't. So here, if I'm clicking on deploying, what's going to happen is that it's going to take the repository that we got in here, and it's going to build the project. So here we have the log on building. We can watch at all the logs while the project is going to be built, and then we're going to have it live. While the project is being loaded, we can see that we've got the same actually the same logs as we have when we build the application in the previous video. We see at the end that now we've got the deploy outputs, and suddenly, there we go, congratulations, you just developed a new project on Vercel, and we have a preview here, black screen with just our hello world. And if I click on it, it's going to open my Next.js 13 course.vercel.app. And if I look at it, there we go. We've got the application that is available on the URL, and I'm going to show it to you, Next.js 13 course.vercel.app. So we succeed in just like a minute to deploy our web application directly on Vercel. What I really advise you to do is that when you are going to launch a web application on production, what you want to do is to deploy immediately the first version, even if there's nothing, even if there's only a hello world online. So from this point, you are able to do branches, to create staging, because we haven't seen it yet, but later Vercel allows us to actually create automatic deployments from branches. So in the future, probably here I'm on the main branch, but if I got more branch, Vercel is going to build every branch. So Vercel is basically creating automatic staging for us. That's what I advise you to do. The first time you are going to create your application, you should directly deploy your application on Vercel. In this video, I'm going to teach you how to run your Next.js 13 application inside a Docker container. So the first thing you should do is to go on docker.com, and if you don't got Docker installed, you can click here on download for Mac or Windows if you got a Windows or Linux. And then after that, we will have a software that will help us to manage the containers that will actually host all the application that we want. Basically, here we've got our Docker instance inside our Docker desktop. and we've got all our containers that are running or not, and we can see that we can start the container, we can stop them, we can delete them, etc., etc. Right now, for instance, I got 2 containers. So on these 2 containers, I got 2 applications that are supposed to run. One here is Code with Guillaume. It's actually the instance of my own website that I run locally when I want to make some tests or stuff like this. And I got an API that is stopped. So you can have front-end application and back-end application. Right now, my application is running on localhost 3000 through my terminal on VS Code. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to actually stop my Node.js server running, and I'm going to create all the files to make them run into Docker. So the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to create a Docker file, okay? So I'm going to type touch Docker file. I'm going to first give a Node.js version, because of course we will need to have a Node.js instance inside our container, otherwise Next.js will never run, okay? So I'm going to type node, and here I'm going to use the version 18 minus Alpine. All right, then what I need to do is to say in what directory inside the container I will make run my application. You don't want it to be a mess, so I'm going to put it in /app to start. Then what I want to do, I want to copy paste actually my package.json. Here, this is the file that helps me to grab all the package of Node that I need to use. And I want to copy them actually at the root of my application, so point and slash. All right, then I want to run, okay, npm install, because I want to install on the Node.js that I got. Then I want to copy paste actually this package inside here. So once the package.json has installed everything in here, I want to copy paste actually the package. And then I want to type run npm run build, because this is where I'm going to build my Next.js application. Once it's done, where I run it, actually, I want to copy here my next folder. So remember the next folder, this is the folder where you build your next application. So I'm going to type here, I want to copy it inside at the root of my Next.js application. Once it's done, I want to make my application to run, and I'm going just to type, of course, npm, and here it's separated because we don't have spaces, npm run dev. So I'm going to open my terminal, and I'm going to type docker build -t, and here I need to give a name to this application, so it's going to be Next.js 13 course, and I want to make it run from where? Directly from where I am right now. Okay, so when I'm going to type this, okay, it's going to build the container with all the specification that I put up here. I need to create another file, which is a Docker compose file. Actually, it's a YAML file with more configuration about what I want to run. So I'm going to type touch docker compose.yaml. Okay, let's write this docker compose YAML. First, we need to give a version. Here it's going to be the 3.5, it's the latest one. Then we need to specify the services, and the services for what application, the app that we are creating. I want to say that when I build, I want to give a context, and the context, of course, is the local folder, so we can put a point for the local folder. Then I got to specify the Docker file, and the Docker file is going to be Docker file with a capitalized D. All right, then I want to give a container name, and on this container name, I want to put actually Next.js 13 course. Okay, once it's done, I want to give the ports, because remember, a container is closed, and we got to give access to this container if we want to be able from localhost to retrieve the container. So here I'm going to say from 3000, I want to access 3000. Okay, then I'm going to go here, and I got to talk about volumes. The volumes, this is where I'm going to find my app. So the first thing is that my app is on the folder app, but actually I want to say, hey, locally here, the destination with 2 points, and I'm going to zoom a little bit maybe for the need of this course. The destination is going to be /app. All right. Then what I want to say on /app /node modules. All right. I'm going to find my modules. Now we are ready to build our container and make it run. This command is going to be docker compose up minus minus build. This is the flag to build the Docker container. So I'm going to type enter, and here we see that we got the process running. Let's build, let's come back to Docker Desktop, and we see that we have our application running Next.js 13 course, okay? And here we see here that we got 3000. This is the port of the container and the port of the access actually we want from our localhost. So if I go here and I update, I can see that I got my application running. So I'm going to get back and I'm going to go to my page here. Hello world from Docker container. I'm going to save, and if I come back, we see that we've got all the updates. There's a lot of reasons why you would use Docker. There are reasons of environment, security, or because you want to isolate your application from your global OS, your local OS. Using Docker, it's very useful, especially in companies where you want to set up quickly the application. So me personally, I'm always developing my app through Docker, but you gotta be safe because at a certain point, containers are taking a lot of space. So if you want to run your application through Next.js with Docker, it's totally possible by creating this Docker file and this Docker compose. The last tip that I'm going to give you is that you're not obliged to always type Docker compose up flag build, okay? You can use, once it's done, Docker compose up here. But instead of writing always Docker compose up, you can create a make file. And with this make file, we can make shortcuts. So if I type up in here, for instance, I can just use my Docker compose that I got in here, all right? I got Docker compose up. And instead of always typing Docker compose up, I can type make up like this. And it's going to type for me Docker compose up. You can use this for everything. It's not related to Docker, but I wanted to give you this tip. In this course, I'm going to teach you how to create pages inside the Next.js 13 application, but also how to create sub-pages and catch parameters, even if you have a very long path with sub-parameters inside this path. This course is a quick introduction to pages. My application is currently running on localhost 3000, so I got this hello world, and here we can see that I got at the root of my app folder a layout.tsx. So there's going to be a course about layout coming just after, but what we want to focus on is the pages. So here we see that we got a page.tsx. So here we see that we've got our hello world with the main, and if we look clearly at the code, and I'm going to open it, here we see that we've got the body and we've got the main hello world, okay? So I'm going to zoom a little bit, there we go. So if I come back and I change this main here on this page.tsx, sorry, here we see that here it has been updated and I finally got my div hello world. So we see here that what is displayed, it's this page.tsx at the root of my app folder. So let's come back on the layout quickly, and we see here that I got a layout with the body, and I got this inter.className, which is supposed to be the font, there we go. And here what we got this children. So we see that children is actually going to take page.tsx and display it as the main page. So here, page.tsx is actually the main page of my application, okay? It's actually the first page of my application, right? Now, let's say that we would like to create another page, and we would like that this page would be under a new URL, and let's say that it's going to be a profile page. So I'm going to come back, and with Next.js 13, what we need to do is to create actually inside my app folder that I got up here, a new folder. And in this new folder, what I want to do, I want to write the path of my page. So let's say that I want to have a /profile. I'm going to type /profile. Here, what Next.js is going to understand, it's going to understand that actually we want to have a page at /profile. However, we don't got anything in this folder yet. What we need to do is to create a new page, and here this is a common mistake. What you would do if you do some JavaScript, you would type index.tsx, okay? And inside this index.tsx, you would write your page. However, with Next.js 13, we don't use index.tsx. We use page.tsx. And there we go. So we got our page, and what we would like to do is to do exactly what we got in here. So we got to export by default, okay, a function, and here it's going to be profile, capital P, profile here, and there we go. Here we can export. Next.js understand that we want to export a page. So what we got to do, we got to return some HTML or JSX, and here what we want to say, let's say that we would like to have a div, and here is going to be my profile page. So let's come back to the app and let's go to /profile in the URL. I'm going to type enter, and there we go. We arrive on a new page. And we can see that on this new page, we inherit from the style, from our layout. We got a black background, we've got a white text. All the style is coming from directly inherited from the body. Why? Because on the top here we have our global.css file that is coming from here, and here we see that at the root we've got some CSS include. All right, so that's the first lesson. To create a page, you got to create a new folder and a page.tsx inside. The second lesson is that under your layout, your CSS, your style, is going to be inherited in every page you go, all right? So we see that I got a black background on the main page. If I go on /profile, I would have it. If I want to have a different style, we're going to create another layout, and it's going to be in the next lessons. Of course, I can create as much page as I want, okay? So let's say that actually I would like to create a page with a deeper level, okay? A deeper page level. So let's say that I would like to have a page, not profile, but profile/ID, and I would like to catch this ID. Well, you would do this by nature, you would do profile/ID, right? However, this is not how it works. When you create a page in Next.js, and we see here that it corrected immediately, when you create a page in Next.js, the name of the folder is actually the first step of your path, right? If I would like to have, let's say, profile Guillaume, and here we will have another page under this like about, and here we would have a number 12, for instance. For this kind of path here, we would have to create a page profile, okay, with a folder profile, of course, then a folder Guillaume with a page.tsx, then a folder about with a page.tsx, then here an ID. So that's what we're going to do now. I'm going to remove this here. Let's say that here I would have a profile /profile/12. What I need to do is to create under profile an ID folder, and inside in here, what I would like to do is not to put this ID this way. What I need to do is to rename my folder and put it between curly brackets. And here, Next.js understood that here this is a dynamic variable, okay? Here it's ID, it could be my variable, whatever. Here I just put here ID, okay? And under ID, I would like to do exactly the same. So I'm going to type page.tsx. There we go. And to go faster, I'm going just to copy paste this one and coming back in here, and my ID profile page. So here I'm going to change. I'm going to say it's going to be profile ID, for instance. And then I'm going to come back. I'm going to test it. So I'm going to type /profile/12. I type here, and we've got my ID profile page. So suddenly we are not on this page, we are on this one, okay? And I could go like this really deep, as much as I want. There is a first comment that we can do about that. It's that the day I'm gonna have a lot of pages into my app, and I will have a lot of folders inside folders inside folders, I would have a lot of page.tsx, right? Yes, that's the thing. We're gonna have every time we're gonna have a page, we're gonna have a page.tsx at every level, and your app will be full of page.tsx. So the tip is that if you wanna find quickly the page you are looking for, and here we see that I got a profile just here, and under this I got a profile ID. With VS Code, when I look for a page, here, when I type this, I can type profile here. So here as profile, I got the first page. And then I can type ID. And here we see that I got ID. So this is a quick tip. If you really name well your function under your pages, you will be able to retrieve them faster. Because of course, if you type page.tsx, here I'm going to have all the pages.tsx, and I will not be able to find them really fast. I will have to read every pass that I have in here. So the tip is to give an efficient name. All right, let's say that under ID, I would have another page that would be actually a post page. Okay, and here I'm going to create a new page.tsx, even if it's not mandatory. So I'm going to type this, my ID profiles posts page, there we go. And under this post, I would have a new parameter that would be post ID here, there we go, and I'm going to copy paste, and I'm going to create a page.tsx that we get in here, and I'm going to, I forgot here, my profile ID post, there we go, and under this, we're gonna have profile ID posts ID. Okay, let's say that we're gonna give this name. It's not really accurate for now, but let's just going to give this name. Okay, we got a very deep level here, a very deep intrication of every page. It's not necessarily efficient, it's not necessarily a good practice, but let's work with this to catch the parameters that we want to catch from every page. Because remember, here I passed a parameter, which is the parameter 12. Okay, I got the parameter 12. How do I catch the parameter 12? In the first page. So remember, we've got the profile, we got this page, my profile page, and then we got ID. And I want to catch in here the parameter. So how do I do this? With Next.js 13, we got Next Navigation. Next Navigation helps us to extract the router logic and to use it. So here I'm going to go on the top and I'm going to type import. And here I'm going to import from where? From Next Navigation here. I'm going to import a function called useParams. All right, this function useParams will help me to catch the parameter of this ID page. So what I need to do, I need to write actually here, because I can write JavaScript in here on top. I can write here const params is equal to useParams, which is actually a function. And what I want to do, I want to console log the params to see how they look like. And when I come back to my application, I got an error. This error is specifying that useParams only work in client components. So basically, I can not use a server component with useParams in this case. So what I need to do is to add the use client. We're going to come back on this later in this course. So I'm going to come back to here and I'm going to go on the top. And you will see you will do often this on your Next.js 13 application. You will insert your use client string here on the top to specify that you want to use a client component. Okay, so when it's done, I can come back to my app. And here I'm going to inspect. I'm going to go to the console. And we see that I got an object and I got my parameter ID. So I can come back in here and say that I want to catch the param ID that I got in here. So let's come back and we see that this is the number 12, which is the parameter up there. All right, so we just saw how to catch the ID from this profile ID page. However, if I go deeper and here we got the post ID, and let's say that we're going to do exactly the same. So I'm going to go to this post ID page. I want to do exactly the same. So I'm going to put on the top here use client and my use params, and I'm going to copy paste this. What happens if I do exactly the same? If I want to catch the ID of the parent, is it going to work? So I'm going to go here, I'm going to put a slash, and here it's going to be post, and let's say it's going to be post, and here we're going to put 36 as a number. Well, here we got 12 because I'm catching the ID, the params.id. But we don't catch the params.postid. And remember, that's the point. Here, the variable that you are going to put in the same path should be different because you want to catch the ID of the profile, then you want to catch the post ID of the profile. So basically here, if I go down and I type params.postID, I will have at first the post ID. So I'm going just to put that here into comment. And on the top, I would have the params ID. Okay, so I'm going to do this. Let's come back. And here I'm going to update this and look at this. We got the ID, which is 12, and we got the post ID, which is 13. So here we catched what? Post ID here that you see is actually here the path of the page URL. So from the parent to the children, I can catch actually all the IDs that will be into the parameter of the path of my page. This was the first presentation on how to use pages. During this course, we are going to go deeper on how to use everything we can have as tools to deal with pages, parameters, children, etc., etc. But the main idea is that you are creating all the paths of your application inside your app folder by creating folders and page.tsx page at the root of these folders. We're going to deal later at how we can create components that we are going to call into the pages, but let's quickly have a look on the router for the next lesson. Previously, we created a profile page with actually sub-pages like the ID of the profile, then the post and the post ID, and we end up with that. So what we would like to have is some kind of buttons to go to a deeper level of the pages, right? So if I come back here, I got a profile ID with post, etc., etc. Let's say that on the profile page, we got the page profile, okay? And I would like to have a list of profile, my list of profiles, okay? We change a little bit to in order to follow the course entirely. So I'm going to go down, I'm going to say H1, okay, and I got my list of profile, there we go. Then I got the division, and here I'm supposed to have a list of profiles. So let's say that I'm going to have a list, okay, here we got a list, and in this list I would have a profile 1, then profile 2, then profile 3. Okay, so if I come back, I got these elements here and I would like to click on them, then to go to profile/1, okay, so here I got profile 12, but profile 1, then profile 12, etc., etc. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to go to the ID page here, and I want to say that I'm on the profile page ID, and here I want to put actually between curly brackets, I want to put the params.id, okay, because I know that on profile ID, I'm catching the ID. So if I go to profile/1, I got the ID 1. If I go to 2, I got the number 2. If I go to a very big number, I got the very big number. All right, so I go back to profile, and I would like to click. For that, we're going to use the router. So let's come back at the root of our page, so on the profile page. So what I need to do at first is to use the client, all right? And when I use the client now, I can call my use router from Next Navigation. So I'm going to call use router from Next Navigation, all right? This use router gives me an access to the router, so I can initiate here the router inside my app. So it's going to be use router, and there we go. Use router help me to initiate the router and have a look on how the router is looking like, so I can console log my router directly. When I come back to my app, I inspect, and let's have a look quickly. We've got the object here, router, and we see that we've got access to many functions: back, fast refresh, forward, prefetch, push, refresh, and replace. All those functions help me to play with the router of Next.js, right? So what I want to have actually is to use the push function that we got down there. So as it is a course on the router, I'm going to use the router push to go directly to the page. However, there is another method to do it. It's to use the link navigation of Next.js. We're going to probably see that later. So I'm going to come back in here, and what I want to do, I want to actually catch when I click on one element of this list. To do that, exactly like in JavaScript, I can use the onClick function. And this onClick function in here will help me to call router push. And here we got to put the path we want to push. So here is going to be profile/1. Of course, it's going to be exactly the same for profile 2 and profile 3. And we can imagine that later I would have an array with all these parameters here and updating all those parameters. Okay, so let's come back now. Let's close this and let's try to click on profile 1. So here we see that I clicked on profile 2 and I'm on profile 2. It worked. So I used the router, use router, and I used the function push to go to the page. Okay, but now I'm on the page 2. How do I come back to the main page? Well, I'm going to do exactly the same, but under the page where I got the ID. Okay, so here I have the page which is here, profile page, and on the top I already got Next navigation from the previous course. I can type use router and I can initiate my router exactly like I did. And I can put, let's say I'm going to put that into a H1, and I can create like a new div back to main page. And of course, this profile ID component page is going to be used for every profile that we've got. So basically on every page, whatever is going to be the ID, and here we didn't even specify, the ID could be also a name if we want to, we will still have this back to main page, okay? So I can do exactly the same. I can type onClick, and here I can say, hey, I want to just trigger the function router push, and here it's going to be profile. So let's come back. I'm on the page ID Guillaume, I click to main page, I come back here, I go to profile 1, I go to main page, there we go, I go to profile 3, main page. This is it. We created a whole tree of pages that are connected together, and we can, with the use of use router, we can come back to the previous page or go to the next page. On the official documentation, we got exactly the example that I show it to you. And we got more information about how we can create our function to push to the router. So here we see that we can pass a string, but we can also pass parameter if we want. We can use the router refresh function to refresh the current route, for instance, for any reason we would like to. Prefetch will help us to provide a route for faster client-side transitions. So here it's a specific case that I might explain later. Back and forward also. So if you want more information, you can go on the official documentation to see the use router. And we see here that we got the link component here, and it has a recommendation written. Use the link component for navigation unless you have a specific requirement for using use router. In Next.js 13, we can use the router for next navigation to push to some pages, or we can use the link component from React to create links directly inside our application. Previously, we created a folder profile, and in this folder profile, actually we got a page with some links that lead us to other pages. As we see here, it's a list of elements that I've been using with an onClick event handler that I got here, and I push to some pages this way. However, there is another way to create links. We can use the link component of React. Take a look at my code. I have a list here, and in this list I got my elements. And actually, I don't want to use this onClick here. I would like to have links. So if I would be in HTML, what I would do is to come back here and put a link, an anchor here, and I would put my href and my link, all right? Instead of doing this, I can use the link component from React. And here, we got on the top the import that is automatically done. We import link from next link. Remember, we imported router from next navigation. This is something that changed with Next.js 13, right? and we can still use the link element. Okay, so here I got my link, and if I come back here, we see that I got an error because I need to pass, of course, an href, which is supposed to be a string or an object, of course. So here on my link, I should put actually the href to here, and we've got /profile and /number1. Okay, so when I come back here, we see the difference. If I look at it, I got suddenly my link that have been replaced by an anchor. This is because link, it's a React component that is actually using the anchor tag element from HTML replaced immediately into my application. So when I click to it here, it does exactly the same thing as my previous function that I've been using on the onClick, that was router push. But here the difference is that we have a different behavior. Here I got directly a link. So what I could do down there instead, it's using this link all the time. So I'm going to replace all of this. And instead of having this href, what I can do is to immediately change it to just push my string URL, which is the profile that we got in here. So basically, I'm able actually to remove these elements, and I got my free profile page in here. Okay, so this is the first thing. Here we've got the link. But what's the difference with the onClick? Well, there's not a huge difference between them. The big difference here is that my link component, which is here, is natively coming from Next.js and by extension React. It means that I don't have to do all the code, which is use router, push, etc., all my check. I can use directly link to say, hey, here this is going to be a link. And immediately inside my application, my link will be replaced by an anchor. So I respect actually the way of using HTML in a way. That's the first thing, because if you put a click on a div, all right, a div has not necessarily been made to being by nature a link, an href anchor, all right? Here we've got directly an anchor, which is an href using actually the link component from Next.js. So why to use the React router link? Well, actually, we would use the router link for several reasons. The main reason would be that we want to handle the navigation state by using the router of Next.js itself. If you want to create anchors inside your application, it's better that you use them for absolute paths. If you want to make anchor to local pages of the in-app, actually where you are working on and where the client is going to navigate to, you better use the link component because it's directly linked to the UI and the current state of your application. So to avoid problems depending on the state and depending on the navigation of the user inside your current application, please use the link component. Say I would have an external URL, what I would do is to use a href, okay? So let's say that I want to do to https:/codewithguillaume.com, okay? Here I'm going to put Code with Guillaume's website, okay? School online, it's better. School online, I would save this. Here, what I would do is to have actually an anchor inside my code. However, which is tricky to understand and to see the difference, the thing is that here on my code, we see that we've got exactly the same schema. It's the same anchor with an href, and it's doing actually basically the same. The difference is that my link to my school online is leading directly to my external link. But here, my link, which is profile free, so here I'm coming back, profile free, is leading inside my app, okay? So there's a major difference. When you want to use a link directly to target a page inside your app, please use link. Another question that I had is that, can I wrap, for instance, can I wrap a division in here? And let's say that I would have a big square where I got some text, okay? And let's say that I would like to put an image, to put some style. Would it work? Well, actually, it would work perfectly. Let's say that here you would have, inside this link, some elements that you would like to pass, okay? You would like to pass, for instance, like a query, okay? So to do this, it's really simple. What you gotta do is just to pass the elements that you want inside your href in here, okay? So here I'm going to open double curly brackets, and I gotta pass the pass name. So here we got slash profile, and here it's number 3. And let's say that just after this, you would like to pass a query. And let's say that here it's going to be a username. Okay, let's put a username. And here it's going to be Guillaume. And here I'm going to save this. All right. So I'm going to come back in here. And I'm going to click on my big element. And we see here on the URL, so I'm going to move a little bit. We see here on the URL that I got my query as a username. Another thing that could be very boring is that when you click on an element, it scrolls to the top of the page, okay? And probably you don't want to do that. It's just something that you can find on the documentation. It's really easy to do. You can pass the scroll here, and you can pass to true to false. By default, it's on true. Another thing that is basic with LINQ, it's that by default, you are going to prefetch the data from the page where you are going to. Let me explain that. We didn't saw that yet, but there are several ways to render a Next.js application. The most used is the client-side rendering, okay? So basically, most of you will use Next.js with the client-side rendering, and you would like actually to prefetch the data, actually. You would like to prefetch it on the background, which means that on the page you are going to go, probably there is data to prefetch. So what you have by default is the prefetch here that is on true, which means that when I'm going to go to this page, if I get some data to fetch, it's going to prefetch. Otherwise, for some reason, if you want to disable it, you can pass prefetch on false. Last thing to say about prefetch, if you try to test it on local production, it will not work. Actually, it's going to work only on production. Prefetching here is available only on production. In conclusion, we use LINQ to create dynamic link inside the app and to respect the life cycle of Next.js. And for external link, we use the basic anchor of HTML. In this video, I'm going to show you everything about components on Next.js 13, and I'm going to talk about how we use component, how to architecture the folder component, and stay until the end because I'm going to show you how to pass all the props at once from parents to children instead of creating several props all the time. Alright, so I got my Next.js application running. I got one page, I got some pages here, and here at the source folder, I got my app folder where I got all my pages, okay? We saw in a previous video that we have to create folders, then pages, or we can create page.tsx directly to inside the folders to create a page, okay? But now this is the question. Now with this new Next.js 13 architecture, how are we going to do to store our components? Well, it's really easy. What we're going to do, we are going to create a new folder into the source folder, right, on top of app, called components. And in this folder, we are going to store all our tsx files, all our folders that are going to have our components, right? So what I'm going to do at first is that I'm going to create just a new file, and let's say that this new file will be called header.tsx. So I'm going to call here a header.tsx, and first I'm going to use the client that we've got in here, and I'm going to create a specific component here that is going to be export default, let's say, and it's going to be function header, and there we go. And in here I'm going to return what? I can return a header, and this is my header. All right, so we've got our component, and here we see that it's clearly TypeScript JSX that we are writing. It's exactly the same type of code as a page. The main difference is that here header will never appear anywhere if I don't import it. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to come back at the root of my app folder, and here on the top, I'm going to type import header, and here what I can do is if I have my alias at component slash, and here it's going to be header. There we go. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to put that in here, main page of my application, and I'm going to call my component header here on the top. So if I type header in here and I come back, there we go, we've got our header just here on the top of my page home. Okay, so this is how you create component. Okay, here I put header, but actually I could have put, for instance, random name, okay, because here is just the import inside the page where I am. I'm still importing the header, okay, this is a basic to know. I could put the name I want. Here I put random name, and as long as I got the right path to the component that I want, I can rename my component. So here I just put header. So there we go. So we've got this component. So of course the component are piece of UI that are reusable everywhere, and we can put logic into it, or we can just put some design and we inject the data directly to it. All right, so here I created a component header, but actually this component header will be more complicated than this, okay? Let's say that at first inside I will have a div with a logo, and after that I would like to have a menu, okay? So if I come back here, we see that I got my logo, my menu. So for now there is no design, but it's okay, we're going to deal with that later. Let's say that I would like that logo and menu would be another component. Actually a component logo and a component menu. Well, what I can do is create a new file. That's the first thing that we can do. Create a new file logo, okay, and I can just copy paste this and put here instead of this a div with my logo, and I can call it logo. By the way, the name here doesn't matter that much except for the search of your VS Code. And I could do exactly the same for the menu. So if I put the menu here, I can change it and put the menu. I can definitely import a component into another component. There's no problem with that. So here I can go up here and I can say import logo, and again I can go on components and get my logo component, and instead of having this logo I would have my logo here, and I can do exactly the same with the menu. So if I do this, I can come back in here and I can have my logo and my menu self-closed, and it gives exactly the same thing. Right, amazing. So this is the first kind of option we would like to have. However, let's say that I would like to have like some header item. Okay, here, what I would do is to create a new file called header item.tsx. However, there's a moment here, I will have a lot of components, a very big list, because this is just the beginning. So instead of doing this, what I could have done is to create a folder, and this folder would be called header. And inside this header, so I'm going to close everything and we're just going to look at the header itself, I could have an index.tsx. And here this index.tsx would be understood like a header itself. So basically this one here, this header, we got header.tsx, should go into this index.tsx. So I'm going to paste this here, and I'm going to remove this header that we've got down there, and I'm going to come back, and here it's not going to change anything. I'm not going to have any problem. So if I update, there we go, we've got the logo, the header item, and the menu, and there we go, we've got everything. So now let's say that I know the logo and the menu would be only on the header for now. So what I can do is just to grab all of them into here, my header folder. And suddenly we see that I got an alert from VS Code that's telling me that I have to update the import everywhere logo is and everywhere menu is, because I'm changing the path. So if I say yes in here and I come back to my page.tsx, sorry, to my header.tsx here, we see here that menu doesn't get the right path, because now menu is inside the header folder and we've got this. Okay, so let's say that now I'm going to create another folder like profile. This is more clear. When I read my components folder here, I open my source. When I read my components folder, I can go deep down into every folder that contains every file. This is a better architecture than having all the files at the first level. This was the first lesson. The first lesson is that Try not to overload your component folder, otherwise you will lose visibility. Try to create folders with business logic or item logic, whatever, where you store all your files. It will be better for your future work. All right, the second thing is that you got to be aware that component might, and especially business component, might have their own scope, right? So if you are declaring some data into the header, everywhere you are going to import the header, there will be the data of this header, right? So let's give an example. Let's say that here I would have a const that will be name, and here it will be Guillaume, okay? And if I call this constant inside my component by using brackets here, and I put name, okay? And I come back, here I get Guillaume into my header. But let's say that you want to call this header somewhere else. So I'm going to come back, I'm going to go to my page, I got my header on the top. Let's say that we're going to put it also on the bottom. Here I would have the variable of my header component, right? I would inherit it from name. And if I change here the name for Kevin, for instance, it's going to change it everywhere into my application. So to avoid this and to just, for instance, catch this name, what we use is to pass data to components. That's what we call props, right? We pass data through props. Okay, so let me give you an example. Here on my page, let's say that I have, for instance, let's say that I have my name, which is here, which is Guillaume. All right? So let's say that here I want to pass this name to header. So what I can do is to type a name, and here I put brackets and I put name. And we see that I got a problem. The problem is that here name is not recognized on the header because I have to declare. So I'm going to come back to my header my header index.tsx. I got to declare name as a props here. So now that I am on TypeScript, I got to declare actually my props. So let's say that here I would have a props, and this is where I'm going to catch the props, and I could type any, for instance. So now I got my props that are here, and I have passed my name in here. So what I can do is coming back in here, and instead of having name, because name doesn't mean anything in here, what I can type is props.name. Okay, what's going to happen is that it's going to get the data directly from my header. So if I come back in here, we see that I got Guillaume. Okay, so that's the thing. But it's cool, but let's say that instead of having name here, I'm just going to put name here. I'm going to remove it. And I'm going to go down and take back the example of before. If I put Kevin on the bottom and Guillaume on the top, when I come back, I got Guillaume, okay, I got Guillaume on the top and I got Kevin on the bottom as a footer. So as we see here, we can pass props directly here through our components and catching them. Of course, later we would declare here as a type, for instance, my props, and inside in here we're going to declare everything we want. Of course, if you want to catch name directly, what you can do is to deconstruct here and have name and put any or the future props type that you are going to declare. So if you do that here, you need to remove props and you got your name. So I'm going to come back to props because I want to explain you now how we can pass all the props directly from a children, okay, from a children, from parents to children, sorry. Okay, so here I got header name Guillaume, and let's say I'm going to remove this and I'm going probably to clean a little bit, okay, my my thing. So I got Guillaume, logo, menu, Kevin, logo, menu. We don't see a lot why we would do that, but anyway. So I got here a name, then I got an age. Let's say that it's going to be 35, and then here it's going to be here age 24, and let's say that we want to pass something else, is man true, and here we're going to put is man true also for Kevin. So I'm going to do this, there we go. So we've got the header and we've got all these props. So here, if I'm just hiding those two components that I got in here, what I would do, it's exactly the same, age, and here is man. So if I come back, we see that I got Guillaume 35, I don't get my props is man, so I can put is a man or is a woman. Okay, let's say we're going to do that. So is a man or is a woman, and there we go. So it's just like this, there we go. So the thing is that let's say that we want to remove this, okay? And we would like to pass the props to the menu, okay? So here, as you see, I need to import again logo and menu. But how would I do this? Well, the first reflex would be to do exactly the same, okay? What you could do is to deconstruct here and put the name, the age, okay? And isman, and here we could put any, and then what we would do, so let's remove logo for this example, we could do this, okay? That's what you would do. So if I go to my menu, I can do exactly the same, and instead what I can do is here to put props.name, then props.age, then props.isman. Then after, of course, you would pass name, age, isman. So we got 3 levels. We got one level with the home, then we've got a level with the menu, and then we've got the menu at the end. And when we come back, we've got this. But if every time I have to pass all my props like this, it would be complicated, right? It would be touchy, because if I got a lot of props at the end, I will have a lot of code like this, and this is unreadable, guys. So what we would do instead is that instead of having this deconstruct, I would have props in here, and let's say that I would pass directly my props this way, okay? So now instead of deconstructing everything, okay, I would pass my props this way directly to the menu. And let's see if there is a difference. And there is no difference, okay? So now we see that I can catch all my props like this. So this is typically the kind of errors most of developers do. They pass several props, and then after that they deconstruct to pass again the props to several components, and at the end it's a real mess, okay? Sometimes it's useful to deconstruct and pass just some props and not everything, but if you can pass all the props at once, it's the best solution. Last thing that I want to show you is that you can pass also children to your components. Let me give you an example. Let's say that here on my header, instead of self-closing the header this way, I want to pass a message from home, okay? So I can do that inside. I can wrap inside the header all the content that I want, and to catch it in here, what I should do is just to call props.children. Exactly like what you have in the layout. Remember, in the layout, we saw these children here that we can inherit. And if I come back, I got my props.children. So if I come back, I see that I got my message from home. So this is very useful also to know that you can pass element inside your component this way. But be safe here, this element inside the component is wrapped into the context, into the scope of home in here. So you gotta be safe with that. Of course, if you want to, you can also pass, let's say I want to pass my logo, I can pass my logo, and here when I come back, I got my logo in here directly, okay? So I use props.children to pass some data at a certain slot. Thanks for watching this quick look at components. This is just the beginning. All along this course, probably I'm going to show you other tips on how to use and how to manage the component inside your Next.js application. You gotta know that it's also better to always start with pages than reusing the components as much as you can, because you want to avoid to have too many components. So the best thing is to be really prepared when you create a Next.js project, and like for every front-end project actually, you need to work first on the components that you will need, to separate with the design, with the functionality, to determine which components are going to be design components and which components are going to be business components. In Next.js 13, we can use what we call layouts. Those layouts help us to deconstruct all the components under the roots that we've got, to inject some style to change the presentation. Let's give an example. So here I got my folder app, and I got this layout.tsx at the root, and I got this global.css file, which is coming here, injecting my tailwind. If I come back to the page, I can see here that I got all the CSS code coming actually from global.css. And if I go to the page, for instance, /about, we can see here that I still got the CSS. Well, basically, it's coming from the layout, because on top of this layout, I injected actually the global.css file. So let's say that I would have this first style, global.css, And let's say that I would like to create another style that I would like to inject, for instance, on the about page that I got here. What I could do is just to create an about.css file. And let's say that in this about.css, I'm going to put a background red on the body. Here on my main page, so I'm going to come back on my main page, I would like that the background stays black. So I just want to have the layout with the about.css on another layout, okay? So what I would do is to go to about, and remember I told you in a previous video that to create a new page, you have to use page.tsx, okay? But here in this folder, I can create a new layout also, okay? And when I got this new layout, actually, here, Next.js is going to understand that on the page about, I'm supposed to display this layout. So if I type about, what's going to happen here is that I got an error. Why? Because my layout.tsx is empty. I got to write here, actually, the layout code. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the layout, and basically I'm going to do exactly the same as here using children, the props children. So I'm going to come back here and I can close all of this, and I'm going to write my layout.tsx of the page about. So I'm going to type export default function, and here it's going to be, for instance, about layout. Okay, and here what I'm going to return, but well, I want to return exactly the same as before. So the HTML with a body, and inside here a children. Let's say that we're going to start by doing this, and we're going to look at it. Children here has to come from my props. So I'm going to deconstruct props, which is up here, and I got my children coming from here. Now I got to determine the type of children, and exactly like we have on the layout auto-generated with your project, we can type exactly the same, React node. And there we go. Okay, so what I want to do, let's say that I would like to have a header before the body in here. So I'm going to remove this. Here, I'm going to go here and put a header. This is the about header here, and I'm going to save. All right, now I'm going to come back here, and on the page about, I got finally my header and my page about. I'm going to inspect this quickly, and what I can see is that, so I'm going to zoom a little bit for the code. I'm going to move there. Here we see that I got my header and my page about, which is injected here with my head and my body. Okay, so if I come back to the main page, I don't get the header because I'm not using the same layout. So you can create a layout on every folder where you got a page. This is a kind of file that will be created everywhere in every folder that you want to put a layout to. And you can inject what you want at this step. So let's say that here now I want to import my CSS coming from here, and here is going to be about.css. I'm going to save this. Now let's come back to the about layer, and what I got now is my header with the page about and a red background coming from where? From the about.css. So we see that in this layout, I can put some elements. So let's say that here in about, I'm going to put a new folder, and it's going to be Guillaume, okay? And inside I'm going to put a new page.tsx, and here I'm just going to copy paste quickly this. Let's say that I'm going to have return a div with Guillaume, let's say that, and here it's going to be about Guillaume, okay? What's happening is that I'm using the about layout, and I'm using exactly this one, which is the parent of the folder Guillaume. Of course, I could go deeper and deeper, create a layout inside Guillaume, etc., etc. It would work also. I'm not going to pass on all the documentation of Next.js. There's other ways to inject layouts and nested layout. You can go check on nextjs.org. But you got to know that layouts are very useful when you want to separate the design of some pages, or if you want to separate just the injection of some components, such as the header or sidebars. Next.js 13 is providing to us a next image component that we can use to display our image. So in this video, I'm going to show you how to use this next image component, but also I'm going to explain you why to use it instead of the image tag, for instance. And we are going to display some images here and play with the width, the height, all the combination to see how you can use Next image inside your Next.js 13 application. All right, I got my application running, and if I come back to my project, in the public folder here, as you see, I have put my image, which is me.jpg. And if I click to it, it's a nice image of me turning a course inside my office. All right, let's say that I want to just display this image, not on the layout, but on the main page here. What I would do is that I would go on the top here and I would import the component image from Next image, okay? And once it's done, what I would do is to call this component image. And if you already worked or played a little bit with this component image, you might have some errors showing. It's totally normal. I'm going to explain you why you got these errors. So first, what I should do is to get my image, okay? And here the source path, it's the root of my application. So here I got my public folder. So I'm going to zoom a little bit to explain you this. I got my image, which is here. So basically my image is at /me.jpg. Okay, that's the first step. So if I come back to the app, here we see that I got a first error because the Next image component need to be fulfilled with some data, and this data, those props, are first the width. So here let's say that we're gonna put like a width like 1000, and we need also to put a height. However, my image already got a width and a height, so I'm not going to go to see the image size and calculate how I'm gonna do. Let's just give a first example. Let's put a random number here. And then I'm going to put an alt, and here this is me in my office. Okay, so I'm gonna save that, and suddenly I don't got any error anymore. And if I come back to my app, I got my full image with me. And we see that it respected the size, the width, but not the height. Which is weird here is that I first put a height, and if I try to remove the height, we see that we will get actually an error. We need the height property. So when I come back, I need to put the height property, and we see that it took the width automatically. So that's the first thing. As you see, the image component is creating actually an image tag, and it's actually doing another source path, and this image here is optimized. This is the purpose of the image component. The image component is here to optimize your image inside your Next.js application. So it's running a new version of your image with a different, actually a different file size. So here we see 220 kilobits. And if I go here and I look at here, we got a file size 2.45 megabytes. So Next image reduce the weight of my image. That's the first thing. The second thing, we see that we've got an image that is here optimized, and the question we would ask is that responsive? So if I just remove that, we see that my image automatically fits to the maximum width, okay? So this is a very good thing at first. Like this image is not going to be in the overflow, it sticks to the browser size. So the image component has also this role. It's respecting actually the environment where you have put your image. All right, but what if I don't want to put the width and the height? How do I do? If I come back, I will still get the error. Well, there is a bit of a trick. The trick is to import, okay, me, directly from the public folder, okay? So if I go up, here I'm on source, if I go up here, and I go to public, and here there is me.jpg, so I'm going to put me.jpg. What I can do is, instead of putting a string as a path here, I can put actually me like this. And if I do that and I come back, here I'm going to upload, and suddenly we see that the image is working without the width and the height. So if I try again to reduce, actually, it's going to respect the size. So I'm going to create a div, and it's going to be a width of 500 pixels, okay? And inside I'm going to put my image. What's gonna happen in here, and I'm going to try to upload, the image respected the size of the div. So this is the first trick if you are using Tailwind CSS. You're not obliged to put a width and a height on the image, you can just use it that way. There's other props that you can use. You can use the loader here and put like a loader image while the image is going to be loaded. You can put here the path of another image if you want to display an image while it is loading. Another one that I like a lot that you can play with, it's quality. So here, quality is waiting for a number, and this number can be between 1 and 100. So here I got a very nice quality, but let's say that I want to lower the quality to 1. And if I come back and I update my app, we're going to see that the quality of my image is going to be really bad. Suddenly there will be a lot of a lot of pixels and stuff. So you can play also with the quality. If you are looking for more props to use this image component, you can go on the official documentation. You get source, width, 8, alt, loader, fill. There's a lot of other props that you can use to pass actually parameters if you want to play with your image. To finish this quick lesson, I want to tell you to go to see the video of Lee Robinson about using images. He's giving more information about this Next.js image component, and I don't want to repeat everything that he said into this video. But I'm going to give you also a last tip that I'm using in every application I'm doing with Next.js. With Next Image, you can push images such as JPG, PNG, etc., but you can use also SVG. So here, if I change this and I put next.svg, okay, and I come back, Next.js understood that I want to push this SVG like an image. So image helps you also to display interface icon. And here I got an example, I got a nice interface icon, and I'm going to download it, okay, and I'm going to drag it to my application in the public folder. Right? So I got envelope in here, and I'm going to come back and I'm going to put this envelope component, and I'm going to go here, and there we go. We see that I got my envelope component, and I don't got any size for now because actually I put this component, this image component into a div. But if I come back here and I put a width of 36 and an height of 36 also, and of course, what I miss here is my source. So here I'm going to do again my source, and here I can go directly to slash, and here it's going to be envelope.svg. When I come back, I got my little icon, which is here. So here I zoomed, but as you see here, it's an icon like another one. So Next.js helps you also to deal with SVG components, and this is really useful because in most other JavaScript framework, to display SVG, you need often to install a third-party library, another plugin, or something else. Here, Next Image takes care about the SVG. This is really nice to know. So we use Next Image because this component is directly made to do optimization on your image. You can play with different props depending on the size, on the quality, on the behavior you want to give it to. And you can also use Next Image to display SVG components or other elements different from JPG or PNG. With Next.js, we can create a front-end application in the folder app, where we got a file routing system. Every time we are going to create a new folder and add a page.tsx, it's going to create a new route into our app. However, if we create a folder API in here, it's something different that is happening. In the folder API, it's going to create routes for an API, so a backend server that is running on Node. And we can create as much routes as we want, exactly like we do with the folders under app for our client application. So basically in here, I'm going to create my first route. It's going to be called root.ts and not root.tsx because it's not tsx that we want to render, but just TypeScript. And in here, if you did some Node.js backend server before, you would understand immediately how it works. You just create a function that is going to return actually a route, etc., etc. But for those who don't know, we are going to code this first route together. So what we need to do is to export async a function, okay? And here we are at the base of our API. So it's going to be /API, okay? The thing is that here we got to specify the method because when we call an API, you can have several methods. And in here, it's going to be directly inside the name of the function. So here it's going to be async function get. So next to here, I got my Postman that is running, and I got my localhost / API running. And if I try to call here, we see that nothing happens because I didn't code anything. What I need to do in here is to return a response. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to type return, okay? And here I need to use from Next server, the package of Next, I need to use Next response. It's going to create a response from the server directly for me. So I'm going to import here Next, okay, response. So here is going to be Next response. There we go. And here I got to import it from where? From Next/server. There we go. And what I need to return is this Next response. And actually I need to call the method JSON from this Next response. And let's say that at first we are going to answer hello world. All right, I got my first root, so it's /API, and I got my root in here. So if I try to call, there we go, we've got our hello world. Let's create a subroot. Let's say that we're gonna have a subroot that is going to be, for instance, let's say it's going to be products, okay. Well, we need to do exactly the same. So I'm going to type a root.ts, and in here I'm going to put all of this here, and we've got here, let's say that in my products I will have instead an array, okay, and in this array I will have an ID, which is ID1, and a name of the product, it's going to be strawberries, for instance. All right, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to come back here and /API/products, because remember this is the path we created before. I'm going to click on send, and there we go, I got my products. Let's get back to the main file of our application, and in here in products I'm going just to remove this. What I want to do now is not to use a get. I would like to use several other methods. So we've got post, we've got patch, we've got put. Well, every time you want to create a new method through the root, what you can do is just to change the name of the function. So here is going to be post, for instance. Then you will have, let's come back here, we can see we've got put, then patch, then delete, then head, then option, okay? So depending on the method you are going to use, what you will have to do is to create every time a new function for every method that you want to use. Okay, let's stay on post, and let's see that what I can do here. I'm going to try to call post, and what I would like to catch is a body. So I would like to catch the request when I post here, and what I can use for that is to use the parameter request inside the function post. Okay, so here request is of type request, and there we go. So how do I catch this request? Well, just by using this request in here. So let's say that I would have some data, and here it's going to be this. I would await to transform my request as a JSON to read the data that I got in here. So let's say that I want to return the data after. And what I need to do, I'm going to post, it's a bit dumb, but I'm going just to post this object, Joe, age 12, and it's supposed to return to me actually the object that I got in here. So I'm going just to post, and there we go. I got my data with name Joe, exactly what I posted, okay? So to catch the request, you use the request button and the request, parameter, and you turn it into a JSON object. Now, let's say that I would like to have a root, and this root would be users, okay? And inside users, I would have a new folder, and in this folder, I would have a dynamic parameter exactly for the page called user ID in here, okay? So now I got a root API /users/ and here what do we got? User ID. So let's say that I'm going to put a 12 in here, and look at this, I got a JSON, and in this JSON, I already have some users locally. And I would like just to fetch the user that we have here, Guillaume, which is number 12. So I'm going to come back in here, and what I need to do is just I'm going to copy paste this and create a new root.ts, okay? And it's going to be exactly the same. And what I want to do, I want to import my data from where? From here, the root. I got my JSON here. And on the request, I would like to catch the parameter. Is that possible? It's absolutely possible. So to do this, what we need to do is to add here a new parameter called context, and I'm going to put any for now. And so we've got the context any, and what we want to do here instead, so I'm going to comment this for now. What I want to do is to deconstruct params from context, because context is giving to us params. So here, what I can catch is params.userID, because we got here the user ID. Okay, so now what I can do is to look for the user. So I'm going to put data.filter x, and here I will have params. And remember, it's the name of the parameter, user ID is equal x.id. But here, my ID here is a number, and here it's going to be a string. So what I need to do is to turn this xid to a string. So to string, just to be sure that all the time I will be able to catch this. Okay, so I got it, and instead, so what I'm going to do, I'm just going to remove this. Instead, I'm going to return the user. Okay, so here I put a post, but actually it's going to be a get. It's going to be better. So I'm going to come back, and I'm going to turn this into a get, and I'm going to click on send. And what's happening in here, I got my user that is directly here. So it's in an array. I could have done a find. But this is how you catch the params in here. You use actually the brackets to create your dynamic route. And then you can use the params.userID or whatever the name you're going to give to. It's going to work this way. I can definitely call my own API from my client side. So let's come back, and here on the page I got a button called call my API, and I got a function called fetch from API that is going to fetch directly my API, okay? And of course I could fetch any routes that will be created in here inside my app. Okay, so I got my headers, and what I do is that when I get my response, I turn my response into a JSON, and I got my data in here. So here we see that I'm trying to fetch API, but let's create a new route. So I'm going just to use this one at users. So at users, I'm going to create a new route.ts, and you understood that now you will have to get actually you would have to get every time a root.ts file on every folder. So here it's going to be data, and I'm just going to respond this. And actually, I'm not obliged to use the request and the context. Be safe, because here, if you deploy your application, this route is going to be accessible to anybody that is going to call your API, okay? You would have to work on the cookies and the authentication system if you want that your route stay private. All right, so we've got this, and what I'm going to do directly in here, I'm going to call API/users, and we're going to look at the data. So I'm going to click on call my API, and suddenly I got my array with the 2 users that I got here. So you can definitely call your own API from your front-end application for the reasons that you want, but it's totally possible to create a backend side on your application in Next.js and still running an application on the front end. With Next.js 13, we have a new way to use fonts inside your Next.js application. Here on the top, we see that we import a font, and then we inject actually this font down there as a class name. We got inter, which is actually an instance or a variable containing the font inter coming from the package nextfont/Google. And if we go to Google and we look for inter, we see here that we got the font down there. So if we look a bit more down, we got other fonts, and here if I remove it in here, I can see that I got several fonts coming from Google Font. By the past, what we used to do is that we used to go to the CSS file or the SCSS, and we used to inject the font directly from here and coming from a folder that we could have in here, for instance, in the public folder or in an assets folder or whatever. You can still do it. You can still import your font directly inside your project if it's not part of Google Font. But here we see that we got the possibility directly to call from our package nextfont a font that is coming from here. Let's try now to import another font than inter. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to explore this next font, and we see that down there we've got some function, and here I'm going to look for Roboto, and we see that we've got Roboto, which is here, and if I go on Google Font, we can see that I got Roboto also. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to import Roboto, and as a subset, we see that we've got Latin, for instance, and we see that we've got a weight that we have to pass on here, for instance, and we got other several options here. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to import Roboto, and we see that we got Roboto from here. And instead of inter, I'm going to pass Roboto. And here we see that we've got an error. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to add a weight. And here, this weight is going to be actually 400. And there we go. So I'm going to come back to my application. And here we see it slightly that there is a difference. So if I inspect and I look at the paragraph on the computed, what we've got down there as a font family, we've got Roboto. So we've got several fonts that we can import directly from Next Font/Google down there. And if we would like to make a difference, here we see that we inject inter here as a class name, which is actually not inter. We got to change this. It's Roboto now. Okay, so now we inject here the font everywhere into the app. But let's say that I would like to have on my H1, so here on the global.css, let's say that on my H1, I would like to have a different behavior. So what I'm going to do here, I'm on Tailwind, so what I can do basically, because here I could inject a layer, I could inject a body, but here I'm just going to put an H1. I'm going to apply here first a higher size. Here we've got now the title that has a higher size. And then after that, I would like to inject another font, but not coming from the Next Font/Google. What I would do here, and this is a bit dumb because here I'm going to use a link directly, is that I could import, for instance, a font that is not already into the package. So I think inclusive sans at the time I'm doing the video is not part of the package. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go here and down there I'm going to select the sizes. So here I got only two sizes, I got this one. And now that I got this, and I'm going to move a little bit my screen for you to see. There we go. What I'm going to do here, we see that I got the import function, which is here. And now I can import this piece of CSS directly here, directly on my global.css. And what I'm going to do, I'm going just to copy paste the rules, the font family given here, and I'm going to put this Geologica font inclusive sans and sans serif. And when I come back here, I'm going to update. So if I look at the title, here we see that we don't see definitely the difference, but we see now that I'm using inclusive sans. So you can use this option at import to import your font. Otherwise, the last option, if you got a font that is not online and you want to host it, or you want to just import it into your project, what you can do is to download this font, then to upload this font here on fontsquirrel.com here. And what it's going to do, it's going to generate for you all the fonts in the WOF format, which is actually the web format, the best web format. And you're going to have some CSS that you can add to your global.css. And later you can add the font family here. So we saw in this lesson that we can import the fonts from Roboto and inject them directly into our body with the class name. We saw that we can go grab them with the @import if they are hosted on a website. And we finally saw also that we can actually overwrite the main font that is imported here with a specific font directly into the CSS. Next.js is a backend framework. A lot of YouTubers are saying this. And this is true because we can create an API folder and have an API running next to our front-end application inside the same Next.js 13 application. So now we know that this is a server that is displaying actually all our application. What we can do, we can use middlewares. If you didn't do backend engineering before, you have to know that middlewares are files or functions that are between the request and the rendering of the route. So before you enter into a route, you pass through the middleware necessary, and you can do as many operations as you want, such as authentication, for instance. So we can add actually inside a Next.js application a middleware file that is going to stop every request, do some operation, render or not the route, or probably redirect, for instance. So here I got a source folder. So I need to create my file into the source folder. So I'm going to type middleware.ts in here, and there we go. I got my middleware. Otherwise, if I would not have the source folder, I would have to take the middleware.ts at the root of my application. Okay, so how do we write a middleware file? Well, let's just come back to the app folder and the API folder. And remember, we've got from Next.js, Next server that help us to just catch the request and create endpoints into the API folder. Well, basically for the middleware, now you understood that it's exactly the same. So here we can export a function called middleware, okay? And in here, we can just stop the request and do everything we want. So exactly like with a root, what I would do is to import actually my next response to return a next response. And for instance, we can return a JSON, which will be hello middleware. All right. So we've got this, and now we've got at the root of our application, this middleware file that is doing some operation. So if I go back to my app and I update, what we've got down there is the hello middleware that is stopping everything. From now on, I can't enter any route. I will get every time I try to enter my front-end application, this middleware stopping us. So how do I go to the next route? Simply by saying, hey, next, okay? So if I do this and I come back to the main route, suddenly I'm back on my front-end application. Okay, so now let's say, and this is just a first example, I don't got any context right now set up into my app, but let's say that later I would import my context and I would be able to know if I'm logged in or not. So let's say that I'm just going to create a variable here called isLogin, which would be a boolean, and here would be on false. Okay, and let's say that if I'm not logged in, I don't want to enter into a specific route. So what I would have to do is to catch the route where I want to go. So I need to use the request parameter that I got accessed from here. So I'm going to go down, and what I want to know if I want to go to the page, for instance, let's go to /profile. So here I got my error, but here I got my /profile page display. Let's say that if logged in is on false, okay, if logged in is on false, I would like to redirect to another page. So what I would do is to type return next response, and I would use simply redirect here, and in here I would say that I would like to redirect to home. However, here I can't put just this string as a slash. I got to create a new URL, and I got to create a new URL here, and I got to pass as an argument the request.url where I want to go. Okay, and so here what we would do at first, we would say, hey, if request.url would be equal to what? And here we got my localhost 3000, so I'm going to put that. If we enter into this condition, we would redirect directly to the main page. So here I'm trying to go on the main page. It works. If I go to /profile, I'm redirected. However, here, what we would do in vanilla JavaScript, you can basically do it with an object called config that you can create just down there here. If you call it config here, the middleware will understand that you got to pass this config down there. So what I can do is just to take just this answer in here. So I'm going just to command that, and I'm going to put my redirect in here. And in this object, I can pass what we call a matcher. And in this matcher, which could be either a string or either an array, and an array because you would pass necessarily some other pages. Here I would say every time we try to enter to profile, I want to redirect. So this is exactly the same as here, but directly with this. So I'm going to go to /profile, and it does exactly the same. I'm automatically redirected because I'm using the config down there, the config object that is saying, hey, if you try to enter to profile, redirect directly in here. So now what I can do is to try to say, hey, if you are logged in, we want to actually say you can go wherever you want. So it's going to be, if you are logged in, next response, next. So I'm going to come back to here. And if I go to search profile, it will not work because I'm on false. But if I put true and I come back and I go to slash profile, here we've got access to profile because I got my variable up there is logged in. The official documentation of Next.js, there are more insights about matching the path and do all the work you want to do when you want to redirect, for instance, from the public pages to the private pages. But there are some other operations that you can do, such as catching the headers, and we often need to catch the headers. Let's give a first example. Let's say that we would like to catch a cookie. So here, let's say that there will be a cookie, and we would like to get the cookie. What we can do is to type request.cookies.get, and for instance, here it's going to be my cookie. Here we see that we got a problem. Property cookies does not exist on type request. This is because here the request type that we got here, the interface, sorry, is not enough. What we need to do is to use the next request type coming from next server. So if I type next request in here from next server, we see that it is imported up there on the next server. So what I want to do is to import the type here, actually next request, directly from next server. And instead of having this request down there, I'm going to use the next request type. And suddenly we've got the cookie. It's the same thing for the headers. So now what we would like to do is to catch the headers. So we can do request.headers in here. So basically here the request.headers would have to be turned into a new headers object. So here I would put my new headers in here, and then I would have my headers where I could catch my authorization, etc., etc. Quick examples, we saw that with middlewares, we can catch requests and create some operations before we enter in a route. This is very useful, but this is often not enough when you want to do an authentication system. We're going to see later that in our app folder, we can create some spaces with parentheses where we can apply some routes, private, public, authentify, whatever you want to call them. And in addition to middleware, we will be able to create a real authenticated system, secured and efficient. SEO and metadata are very important for most of the businesses because they want to be indexed into search engines like Google or Bing or whatever. And to do that with Next.js, we have tools that help us to set this SEO directly into our application. Either it's going to be static or either it's going to be dynamic. So let's get back to our application. And into the layout here, we see that we've got our metadata object with a title called Create Next App and a description. So if I go back to my app and I look actually into my HTML, so I'm going to go here, and I'm going to go to Elements, and I'm going to go to the head, and I'm going to zoom a little bit. We can see that we've got our title called Create Next App, and we've got our description. So this is on the layout, which means that on every page I'm going to have this metadata. So depending on what you want to do, if you want to index every page and have metadata on every page, you don't necessarily want to have only your layout with metadata, but every page. So here what I'm going to do, I'm going just to change the title, and I'm going to say my application main title. And here, this is the description, the main description of my application. Exactly. So when I come back and I update, we can see that the title and the meta name change with the description. Let's now come back to my main page. I got this quick main page. And what I can do is just to come back here. So I used to have my layout, which is here. And I got my metadata with my type metadata on the top. So I can import back my type metadata and I can import my metadata in here. It would work exactly the same, but on the page.tsx only, not on all the application. And it would be the same on every page, in profile, in about, etc., etc. So here I'm going to be just concise. I'm going to say my page title, and this is a description. Okay, so now I got my page home, we got my page title. And when I come back in here, we see that I got my layout. So if we come back, I got my layout with my application main title. This is the main description. So if I come back and I look at my head, suddenly I got my page title and not the layout metadata. Because here at this step, on this page, okay, on main page, I defined a metadata. So this metadata at the page level is actually as a priority on the layout metadata. Okay, so I got here the metadata specifically about the page. But if I go on the profile page, and here we've got some logic in here, I don't got any metadata, and I'm using it as a client component. So I'm going to go to /profile, and on /profile, if I look at the head, I got actually the layout metadata. So pages will not have any metadata defined, will inherit from the layout.tsx if you put some metadata in here. Let's come back to the main page now, and here I can put way more SEO elements that can help me actually to have a better indexation or just a better look when I share it on the social media. And to do that, I can use Open Graph. Open Graph actually will help me to create a link for social media that will be helpful. So here I can put exactly the same. So I can put the title, the description, and I can put also the URL of my website, so mywebsite.com basically. And I can put the site name also. Here is going to be Code with Guillaume. Okay, Code with Guillaume, there we go. And here, which is probably the most interesting about this lesson, is that in here I can put images. So let's say that I would have an image, and here I don't get any image to display, but on an endpoint I would have my website.png. Okay, here I can put this, and when I will share it on social media, I will get actually the image displayed. Otherwise, I would have an empty image. So here I can put the width, and basically the width most of the time it's 1260 pixels on width, and on height it's supposed to be 800. So there we go. So I could have one image, but of course as an array I could have several images that I would like to display, and sometimes they give you the opportunity to check which image you want to display. If it's going to be on Facebook, Twitter, if you share a link like this, they will ask you for what image you want to add. So here I'm going to add some other things. So here it's going to be English, okay, as a code. Well, you got to look at everything that you want to put in here. And if you are really into the SEO for your application, you can add as many data as you want to this metadata object. Okay, this was just for static generation. We didn't saw the type of generation yet in this course. We're going to see it later. But here, this is only when we generate static content. But sometimes we want to have dynamic content, such as here in the profile ID, we've got a dynamic page with a post ID, etc., etc. So here I'm just going to delete this folder, and I'm going to take a really basic case. So let's say that we got posts, and in this post we're gonna have an ID, and this dynamic ID gonna have a page.tsx. So what I can do is just to go on my main page here and just put a post ID in here, and it's going to be post ID down there, and let's try if it works. So I go back to my app, I'm going to /post, and I'm going to, hey, okay, I'm just going to catch, and here I got my post ID in here. So what I would like to do is that I would like to request an API and with the ID catch the data of a post. So at first I want to catch the params. So remember in here I can catch the params this way. So I got my post and here I got the params.id. Okay, so I'm going to get back. And here we see that I got the ID hey. So it can be a number, it can be a UUID or whatever. We can catch the params in here. So what we would do as a client component, we would fetch from here with the param ID. Okay, but the problem here is that if you do that, it's going to be on the client side. And when the Google bot is going to pass on your pages, your page will be completely empty because it's not going to wait for your your post to be fetched. So the thing we want to do, we want to fetch before as a dynamic parameter and an asynchronous function. Okay, so what I'm going to do in here is just to use, let's say that we would have a function called fetch post, and this function would be actually an asynchronous function with a post ID, which will be the string, and you understand that already we can catch this parameter here at the component level, but also at the level of the application. So what I would do in here is to say, hey, I would like to fetch a post, and if this post exists, so fetch. And here it's going to be from instance from a posts API, and we want to pass what? The post ID. So if I want to pass the post ID like this, I got to put it dynamic. There we go. And here we would say that it's a method. We can put our method get. There we go. And we would like to return the post.json. So when do I call this function? Not inside the post ID in here, but we would use a function that is provided by Next.js, which is generate metadata. So you got to write this function this way, metadata, to be detected by Next.js. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to export an async function called generate metadata. And this function is going to take what? The params that we got in here. Exactly like a middleware, we can catch the request. Here we can catch also the params. And this is where we are going to call our function. So we'll get our post that is up there. So I'm going to say await, and it's going to be fetch post params.id. And necessarily we got a params.id because we are on the ID page. And what we want to return in here, we want to return the title of our post. So here what I got actually my post here dot title, which because here what I'm going to do as return, I'm going to have actually in this case I'm going to have my post with my title, etc., etc. If your models change, of course, don't put what I put here. Just adapt the response to your model. So I would have my title. I would have my description, which is post.0.description, etc., etc. Here, you understood that we return the same model as here, but completed with the post that we got up here. All right, so I created an API endpoint under post/ID, and I got this ID. And what I'm doing is just I'm looking for a post, which is here, and I'm trying to find, my post that is existing with the params ID. So if I get back here and I try to go directly on this endpoint that I've put online, I got my post with the number 12. Actually, it's a bit dumb because if I put 1, I just got an empty object. So what I want to do is just to come back. I'm going to go here, and instead of having this here, what I'm going to do, I'm just going to remove got my endpoint. Usually you are supposed to put it into an environment file, okay? Okay, so now I got my post here on my generate metadata. And what I did, I created a post endpoint where I'm returning a list of posts here just for the example with the ID 12. I'm going to look for the post 12. And I will see if I got my hello and my amazing post that are going to be completed here in this generate metadata that is going to be returned automatically. Type post 12 and look at this. There we go. We see that I got post 12 and we see that I got hello and I got my amazing post directly inside my header, which is coming actually from my endpoint. So here, this example was actually the dynamic SEO set on a page with a dynamic parameter. Depending on your strategy, if you want to do static or dynamic fetching for your SEO, you would have to use these two different methods to set your SEO data into your application. It's also depending on what kind of application you are building. If you work on a marketplace and you want to be indexed into Google because your products are going to be indexed inside all the searches, you would have to really focus on how to set up the right SEO every time you are going to add a new product to your platform and every time you are going to build again your application. So basically, what you would do is to go to the page with your dynamic parameter for this example, and you would have to work on setting with generate metadata the dynamic parameter of the page you want to generate. When we create a front-end application, we often need to catch the parameters or the queries inside the URL of the application. In this video, I'm going to show you how to catch the params inside Next.js 13 and how to catch also the queries. There is two cases different that we are going to explain. The first case is going to be the static and then the dynamic. So right now I'm on Next.js, okay, and I got my application running with a /post/1. And up there, we would like to catch the number here of the post or the ID of the post. If I look at my root right now, I got here between brackets ID that I would like to catch. All right, so the first thing that I would like to do is just to determine if I am on the client side or if I am on the server side. Here right now, I'm going just to put a use client up there. And when you're going to use the client to catch your params, what you're going to use is use params from Next Navigation. So what you're going to do is that you are going to import from Next Navigation here, navigation, there we go. You are going to use params, okay? Use params, it's a function. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to type params here, use params. And I'm just going to console log the params that I got down there. And when I go to my console, we can see that I got my params down there ID. So I'm going to get back. And what I can do here is to put params.id inside my template. And if I come back, I got the number 1. If I put 12, I'm going to have the number 12. Or if I put Guillaume, for instance, I would have Guillaume just written in here. So when we use the client, we use params. Now let's just try to remove the use client and use the params this way. Here we've got an error that says that we use params only works in client component. Okay, so we can't use here the use param to catch from next navigation to catch the param. So how can we do that? You just can here open the props that you got up there, put a params, and in here it's type any for now. And here I got my params, and down there I'm going to type params.id because here in my path I got the ID between brackets. So I'm going to come back. I'm just going to update and we've got Guillaume and then I got 1 or I got 12. So this is the main difference. When it's not on the client side, you can use directly the params from the function up here inside your post ID in here as a parameter, and you can extract either it's going to be ID, either it's going to be a name, a slug, or whatever. Of course, in this params list, you would have all the parents and the children depending on how far you go, how deep you go into the folder architecture of your root. You can catch all the parameters that you got down there. Now, let's say that we would like to put a query. Let's say that up here, we would have a new, which would be on true, okay, or new, which would be on number 1, whatever. If I type enter, then I got the same route and I got here my query. How would I catch this query up here? How would I catch this new? Well, to do this, what we would like to do in the client side, so here I'm just going to get back to the client side, and in here, I'm going to put post ID again. There we go. We would like to use a function called use search params. And this function, use search params, comes from Next navigation, of course. So here I'm going to come back here and I'm going to put use search params. There we go. And down there, I'm going to put here search params, which is actually here is equal to use search params. So let's just console log search params to see how it looks like. So if I come back to my app, we see suddenly that use search params is returning to me many functions that I can use: entries, for each, get all, as, keys, toString, values, and we see that we can use actually those functions to do some operations. So you understand that for each we will have every element and we will loop through every element. Get all, we would get all of them, has, keys, toString, etc., etc. If you've done some JavaScript before, it looks familiar to you, you basically understand what it does. So let's say that I would like to get new. So here we see that we got get. So I'm going to get back in here. And I'm going to type const and it's going to be new param. Okay. And let's say that I'm going to type search params.get. And in here, I'm going to put the name of the param that I want to catch. So here it's basically new. So what I can do, I can go down and I can console log new param. And if I come back, here we see that I got one as a string. And this is a very good example. Here in the queries, everything is going to be a string, of course. So if you want to add a number as a query, you would have to transform it later, or same for a Boolean. Okay, so when I get back, what I can do is to put here my new param here. There we go. And if I come back, I got this. And if I put a true, for instance, I got true. But here, of course, true is a string. All right, what if I remove use client again to fetch my query on the server side? When I come back, I got exactly the same error as before. Use search params only works in client component. Add the use client directive to the top of the file to use it. So how do I get my queries? Well, I would remove use search params and I would not use it. I would get back to what I did before, just inside here, inside my props. Remember, we've got params, but we've got also search params. So here I'm just going to put an any for this example. I'm going to console log my search params that I got down there. And of course, we are on the server side right now. So what I need to do is just to update here my page. And if I come back, we see here that I got search params.new. So let's try to put it in here. I got directly search params.new in here. And when I get back, we see that it has been rendered. We saw that with Next.js 13, the experience to catch the parameters and the queries is way easier than before. You can use the function provided by Next navigation, use params and use search params to catch the parameters and the queries on the client side. Otherwise, you're going to use the props, and in the props, you have params and search params that are available to catch all the time the data that you want to pass through your URL. You probably want to fetch some data into your application, even if you are on the client side or on the server side. In this video, I'm going to show you how to fetch data in many ways. Right now, I got a /post/id route, and I'm catching here the parameter, which is 1. And I got on my API side actually a list of posts that would be returned actually directly from a list that we got in here. So let's start with the server side. What I'm going to do here is to create a function that I'm going to call directly actually inside my post here, my function post ID in here. So we're gonna see the difference. Here I can declare, for instance, a function called getPostById, let's say, okay, and it's going to be an asynchronous function. And this function here, it's going to call my own API. So here what I'm going to do, I'm going to type const response, and here it's an asynchronous function, so I got to put an await, and I can use fetch. So at this step of the course, I'm going to explain to you that here fetch is available on the server side, okay? So in fetch, I can pass a lot of parameters. The first parameter, of course, it's going to be the URL, and then after I can pass the header, the method, etc., etc. Okay, so we got get post by ID, and here I would like to pass my post ID, which would be a string. All right, so here I'm going to call /API/post, and in here I got to put actually this pass as a dynamic root. And inside here, so here I made a mistake, I'm going to add the parenthesis again, there we go. In here, I'm going to pass the post ID that we got in here. So the method of this code, it's going to be a get. So if I come back here, I got a get. So I'm going to put method, and here I got get, and there we go. So now that I got my response, what I can do is to return actually this response as a JSON. All right, so you're going to tell me, thank you very much, Guillaume, for this quick explanation about this function, but what should I do with it, okay? Yeah, of course, you got to call this function, otherwise you will never be able to retrieve the post. So here I'm going to type post, and in here I got access, of course, to the function because I'm in the same scope. I'm on the same file. So remember, I got my params.id, which is coming from here. And what I need to do in here is to await for what? For get post by ID. And in here, I got to pass the parameter of the current ID, which is params.id in my root. All right, but look at this. Here I got an await, and my function here is not an asynchronous function. So what I need to do is to put this function asynchronous. We see that we got an error. And if I come back in here into my code that I've just written, here I got a pass, but this pass, it's not a complete pass, okay? Here, I assume that locally I can fetch my API. But it's not the case. At this step, the API is not available here. What I need to put here is the HTTP, and here my localhost 3000 to get access to my API, all right? So it's a common mistake. You think that you can call your API this way when you are on the server side, but it's not possible. So I'm gonna come back, and here we see that I don't get any error. So as a front-end developer, what you would do is to open your console and look at the console log we have in here, but actually it's rendered on the server side. So basically what's happening in here is that I have to open my console inside VS Code, and what we have here is an empty object, of course, because if I look to my list on the API in here, I don't get any post with number 1. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to put post number 12. And here we see that I got my answer. I got my post down there that I can return. So basically here, if I come back to my front, here what I'm supposed to have is a deconstruct object with post, and I got my post in here. So what I can do is coming back in here, I got a title, I got a description. So let's say that I'm going to build a little bit this post, so post.title, and down there I'm going to put a post.description in here, okay? So when I come back, I got my hello and my amazing post. So this was on the server side. When I use the server-side function up there, outside of my function that I export into my file, my TSX file, I can call my function getPostById directly here with the params cached. Okay, so now let's try to use it as a client, okay, as a client component. We suddenly see that async await is not supported by a client component. Only server component can use async await. So here we see that there is a main difference between client component and server component. So if we come back here on the top, I got my use client with my get post ID, and I'm calling this async await here a function that I got. So if I want to do it on the client side, what I need to do is to remove this async, but suddenly I don't get any await. So what should I do? What should I do is to drag and drop this function get post ID, get post by ID directly in here. So here I can't await actually this function to be processed at this step. And even if I try to move this function inside my client component in here, and I try to come back and I try to upload, I still got an error. So how can I do this? How can I recreate this function get post by ID that I can call directly into my post ID in here? Well, what I would do is basically, and here I think I can just comment this. What I would do here, for instance, is to create a post and a set post, and I would use my state, okay? And in my state, by default, okay, I would put a null. So here, what I would have probably, if I would like, is to create a type post. Actually, type post is equal, there we go. And here with a title that would be a string, and let's say that this title would not be mandatory. And here a description. So what I would do down there is to put my state post or null, and there we go. So here as a condition, I would put post and post title, and exactly the same in here. Here I made it by purpose to put two posts like this. I could do it better, but it's just to show you how we could do. Okay, so we got our post, which is empty. So I don't render anything in here. So how would I write this function on the client side? I would write it slightly differently from the server side. What I would do at first is to rewrite it directly in here. So I would create an asynchronous function that I would call like this. And in here, and I'm going to zoom a little bit for that, I'm going to write a try catch, okay? So if I would have an error, I would console log my error. What we want to do here is to use the params ID and to set our post if we've got a response. So I can bring back this piece of code up here, and let's say that if I got a response, I want to just to start for this course, console log my response. All right, that's great. But at this step, I never call my get post by ID. So what a lot of people would do directly is to use effect here, and this may be here the best solution to call my function. So I'm going to just use get post by ID, and as an empty array here, I would say that actually when I put this empty array, it means that I want to trigger this function when the component is rendered, when it's ready. Okay, but I forgot something in here. I still got my post by ID, but post by ID doesn't exist. So what I need to do is to use the params ID. Okay, so we got our function. It's supposed to be triggered in here, and if there is a response, we want to console log the response. So I'm going to come back in here. I'm just going to remove this. All right, so I got this response in here, but I can't do anything with that. I'm going to come back in here, and I want to turn it actually into a JSON. So I'm going to type here await, and here I want to console log my data. So I'm going to type data, and there we go. And when I come back, I got my post that is available in here. And what I can do is actually to deconstruct here with the post. So I can remove that. And suddenly what I can do is to set my post. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to say if post, and here I'm going to say set post of post. And suddenly I got my hello amazing post. And this is it. So when I get the response, I turn the response into a JSON. And if there is a post, I set my post. So we've got our function here on the client side, which is actually slightly longer than on the server side, but it's done on the client side, on a client component. A lot of you would ask, what should we do while we wait on the client side to get the answer from the API? Because here we see that we've got a bit of timing in here. If you are on the server side, you can create in here a loading.tsx, a loading page, okay? And here you can put your loading elements such as skeleton or whatever. And on the client side, what I suggest you to do, and that's what I do most of the time, is to put a loading state, okay? So let's say that our loading state would be on false. And down there, instead of having this, I would have a div with my loading element. Then I would have another div with a post. And here I would display this only. So only if I'm on loading, okay? And down there, I would display this only if I'm not on loading. And in here, I would check for my loading element. The only thing that I need to do is to come back here and to put my set loading on true here, for instance. And after my catch down there, I would put a finally to say that every time you finish to do your operation, you set loading on false. I just put a debugger after my call to show you the loading state because here it's really fast because I'm calling my API locally. What I can do is to try to reload, and here we see that I got my loading element just in here. You could do, for instance, a skeleton, a gray skeleton, showing the UI, waiting for the data to be completed. Let's come back on the server side and let's talk about revalidating the data. Why? Because with Next.js, you can revalidate, which means refetch again the data at a certain interval. Why would we do this? Remember here on the server side, we generate directly the page that we want when we go to /post/id. But the problem is that probably the data would change while we are on the page and we would like to revalidate. So what we can pass here as a parameter, we can pass a parameter next, which gives us informations actually to the next state of this request. We want to do something with it. And here we can use what we call revalidate. There are two ways to revalidate. You can say that it's going to be manual or automatic. So automatic, it's with the milliseconds. Let's say that every 5 milliseconds, I want to revalidate the data. So it's going to update again the page data based on this one, okay? Or otherwise, you can use it manually. Then we saw different ways to fetch data inside a Next.js application. Either it's going to be on a client component, so it's going to be inside our function, and we would have to work on setting a use state or a loading state inside of it if we want to make a clean front-end application. Otherwise, if it's on the server component, you can do it outside your post ID, create your function, and you can fetch the data directly after that inside the function rendering the page or the component. If you want to revalidate the data, because here the data here fetched is going to be fetched one time, you can revalidate and clear the cache of Next.js by using the next revalidate. It would revalidate your data inside your page rendered. Caching in JavaScript application is very useful and it's important for several reasons. And in this lesson, I'm going to explain to you what is caching and how to use it in a Next.js 13 application. The first reason why you would use the cache, it would be for performance reasons. Of course, when you use the cache, you save the data locally and it improves the performance because you don't have to call all the time the API to refresh the data. The problem is that probably the data would have changed in the database and probably your cache is overwriting the regeneration when you call your API. We're going to see in this lesson how to avoid this. The second reason would be about the bandwidth. You don't want to call your API all the time because it costs you money. And every time you are going to request your API, it's going to launch a process which could be long or not, depending on the amount of requests your API is receiving at the time you do your call. The third reason would be a faster user experience. When you get data that is cached, actually your application is served quicker than it is not. The fourth reason, of course, we already talked about it. We have a reduced load server implication into the process. So offload server resources are reducing the cost of the server. And the last reason, of course, it's because you would like to have, for instance, an offline access to your application. So if you want to let your user to access to the application offline, you would use the cache. All right, back in my application, I got two pages. I got the page app and the page posts. And both of them are server-side rendered, so it's server component. And here we've got a function that is rendering, and it's exactly the same function in here. I could have externalized this function, but here I just copy-paste it. That is rendering a random number, which is mat, floor, etc., etc. This example, you see it in a lot of lessons on YouTube, and I think this is the best to explain how cache is working. Okay. So both of those functions that we get in here are calling the function here random 3-digit number. So let's come back in here and we see that we've got on the home page a number 184 and we've got a link to post pages. So I'm going to click on link to post pages and suddenly I arrive on the post page with a new number which is 564. Okay, if I come back to the home page, and we got to remember the number here. If I come back to the home page, suddenly I got 184. But there's a problem, right? Because here I'm supposed to call random digit number, and every time I'm going to call this function, I'm going to have a random number, right? And here I don't got a random number. So what's happening in here is that we are currently using the cache. So on server component, by default, the data that we've got is cached. So this is why probably if you are using the server components, you would have some cases where the data is not regenerated. Don't worry, it's totally normal. We are going to show you later how to regenerate the data directly inside your server component. Okay, so I'm going to come back to the post page, and here I refreshed it and we got 635, and if we switch between home and post, we see that we have data that has been cached. Okay, if I come back to the post page and let's say that in here I would like to transform this post page into a client component, does it work the same? So I'm going to go on the top, I'm going to type use client in here, okay, and there we go. And with this use client, I'm going to get back, and down there I put some Tailwind CSS to show you the difference. So here we got the client component, we got 784. So post page is now a client component and we got 784. If I come back home, I got a server component with 443. And if I switch, suddenly the client component got a new number. And if I come back home, I still got 444. And if I come back, here we see that every time I switch, the client component doesn't cache by default. So this is the first lesson. The client component doesn't cache by default, and the server-side rendered component is caching by default. So as a client component, the function random 3-digit number will be called all the time as rendered. However, on the server side, it's keeping its first value until the moment I regenerate the page. But if I don't regenerate the page, I stay at the number that I had before at first. Let's make now the demonstration with an endpoint inside our API. Here we've got an API random endpoint of a get method with a next response returning to us an object random with exactly the same function that we used inside our server-side component. In my application, I created 2 new pages for the client and for the server demonstration. So we are right now on server-side rendering, and I got a call to get random number, the function that is going to call my API random. And if I come back in here, we see that I got 877, and if I update, the number stays the same. By default, on server side, the cache here is no store. We see that by default, the cache is going to be applied on top of every call. So you can call as much time as you want, as many times as you want. It will stay on the first results that it got. So if you want to avoid this, you can pass here cache no store. And every time that I'm going to call my server-side rendered page, we see here that the number will change. By default, here it's going to be force cache for SSR, which means that it's going to stay on the first value that it got, and it's going to keep the cache as long as we manually recall the API to get a new number. Let's do exactly the same with our page client-side rendered. So it's exactly the same as the SSR page, all right? And here we are going to call our API. We're gonna have the random number that is coming back. And here I'm going to go to the endpoint, and basically here I have the number displayed. So we see that every time that I call, I got a new number. We are on the client side. Client side doesn't cache by default, okay? By default, actually, it has the cache no store. And with cache no store, actually, we never cache the data. So every time the component is going to refresh the data. Let's say that you want to do the opposite. You are going to use cache force cache, okay? So I'm going to come back here. I got 815, and every time I'm going to update my page, I'm going to have 815. So on the client side, you can cache by using force cache, and by default, it's no store. And on the server side, it's the opposite. By default, it's force cache, and here it's no store. Okay, let's come back to this server side page that we created before. And we've got this function get random number that is called, and we got a random number. For some reason, we would like to update this number X amount of time per day, because we don't want that all the time we will keep the same cache data, okay? And we probably want to stay on server-side rendering in here because we got some SEO optimization or SEO configuration on this page, and we would like to keep it on the server side. So how can I do if I come back here to remove this number and update this number? And by extension, here we talk about the number, but actually I'm talking more about refreshing the data on a product. Let's give an example. Let's say that this page is a product that you cached, but probably the price of the product will change every hour, and you would like to actually update the cache. How can you do? You would like to turn this into a client component by default, but you can keep it actually as a server-side rendered component. And what you can do here is to use Next, and you can use revalidate. And revalidate here, it's a parameter that you pass to say, hey, I want to keep this page on server-side rendering, and I would like to keep the cache, so keep the data for a certain amount of time. And let's say that here it will be 5 seconds. Every 5 seconds, I would like to revalidate the data. I would like to refresh the number. So here, we're going to have one number. It's going to stay 5 seconds. And after 5 seconds, it's going to refresh, call again. Okay, we got a number here, which is 267, and I update, and suddenly the number change, I update, 917, 950. Every 5 seconds, the cache will be updated because I passed the next revalidate that I got here. I would need to pass next revalidate to update the data X seconds. Otherwise, it would keep always the data that has been cached. So we use next revalidate when we want to say to the application, use the cache. However, every X seconds, update the cache. Notification or toast. We often need to display into our application a box that says, hey, your action successfully happened. And in this video, I'm going to show you many options to add notification into your Next.js application. But stay until the end, because at the end, I'm going also to talk to you about one of the latest package that came out, and which is for me the most impressive and the best on the market right now. All right, so the first option, it's React Toastify. So here we've got an example of what we are looking at. Here, it's basically a box that appears for some time, like let's say 3 to 5 seconds. And we've got some text into it. We can have emoji, we can have some colors to say, hey, it's a success, or it failed, or warning, something happened, or whatever information. And React Toastify is really successful. We can see here that we got 1 million download this week, more than 1 million, 1.5 actually million. And it's really known. You just have to type yarn-hard React Toastify. And then there's just this quick piece of code on your app. You got the function notified, and you got the toast container. You got to import the CSS, of course, and the package. This is really nice. The problem here for me is that here there's probably too much style for me. I would have to really work on the style, because probably in my application, I don't want to have such a box like this, such a padding or whatever. It would make really a difference with my style. So React Toastify is the first option where you can go to. There is another one, which is on Material UI, and here we probably got something better. As we can see here, when I click on the button, I have the notification, which is here. So here we see that this notification is better than the previous. We just got a text into it, and we've got this box here. The problem is I need to install Material UI and to use Material UI in my application. For me, it's not useful. So I would erase this option now. The latest option is to create your own Tailwind CSS toast. However, it's probably a bit a waste of time when you want to go fast, because you would have to write your own CSS. And here on Flowbyte, we've got an example. Here we've got the notification that appears, and we can put our own style. This is very nice. But the thing is that I would have to create my own component. So for me, it's not necessarily a problem to code my own component, but you got to know that it's some time that you got to pass on coding your own component. Recently, we had this package, Zoner, that came out on Twitter. And this is the one I wanted to show you today and that we are going to use in a demo. Zoner, it's an opinionated toast component for React. And we see that it's basically the same here. We got npm install Zoner, and we got some code. It's really, really easy to use. And then we got this toast even has been created option. And we got the position also, which is here. And when we click on it, we see clearly that we've got a component toast here, which is really simple. Okay, there is almost no design. Okay, there's a bit of shadow, but it's really empty, and I really see it into my app, because right now, Zoner here is probably the most light package that we've got, and also this is the one with the less style. So let's just copy paste this. Let's come back to my app. I'm going to stop, and I'm going to install Zoner in here. When it's done, I have to restart my application, of course, and I need to go to my layout. So I'm going to come back to my layout, and on the top, I'm going to import my toaster here, just down there. And here, what I'm going to do also is to use my toaster directly into my layout. So I'm going to go down, and just after my children, I'm going to use this. Here, I'm going to turn my layout as a client. So I'm going to use the client. And so I'm going to remove this metadata. And there we go. Let's use this package. So on my page, I got a button, which is notify me. So I'm going to come back here. I got my notify me. And if I come back here, we can see that the only thing that I got to call is toast from Zoner. So I'm going to come back in here. I'm going to go on the top, and I'm going to import toast from, and here I can call my package, which is Zoner. And here I'm going to simply call on click. I'm going to call my toast, and I'm going to put here my notification. Okay, or success. Probably it's better to put success, because this is what we want to do. So of course, what I need to do is to use it as a client here. All right, let's test the notification. If I click here on notify me, we see here this nice notification success that stands for a moment, then nicely disappear. I love it. Okay, let's say that now I want to have some colors, and what we can use is rich colors. So I'm going to get back, and I'm going to put rich colors as a property in here. I'm going to put toast.success. I'm going to click And there we go, we got success in here. As you see, the code is really light. It is working. This is perfect. And now I'm going to try with error, and I'm going to get back, and I click here, and we've got an error toast. If I click multiple times on it, we see that we've got this nice animation that is actually showing toasts on top of each other, which I like the most. Now I can put expand true. And if I click, we see here that we've got a list of components that are on the grid just here. Personally, I prefer not to expand. So we've got here all the notification on top of them. And if we wait a little bit, they will all disappear. We saw in this video that we got many options to create notification or toast inside your Next.js application. You can either download a package such as React Toastify or Zoner, which is for me the best. Or if you want, you can code your own notification system through Tailwind. The notification, it's a big part of JS applications right now on the market, because we always want to show that there is some dynamism inside our apps, and we always want to talk to the user and say, hey, something wrong happened, or hey, it's a success. When we want to share data inside a Next.js 13 application, most of the time we are using props. However, we can create what we call a context that is going to centralize the state of the data for the whole application and share this data to all pages and components. So in this video, I'm going to show you how to create a context, a very simple one, inside your Next.js application. So the first thing we need to do is to go inside our applications at the source folder here, and I'm going to create a new folder. And inside this new folder context, I'm going to create a new file that is going to be an index.tsx, because here I'm on TypeScript. This is where we are going to store our context with the wrapper that we are going to pass here to the layout. And we are going to wrap our whole application with it. So we're going to do that in 3 steps. The first step is going to be to create the context, then to create the wrapper, and then to use a function to actually deliver the context to the whole application. So I'm going to import create context here from React. Then I'm going to create my context. App context is equal to create context simply. And there we go. We've got a context that is created. We need to export a function that is going to be the wrapper. So here I'm going to call it app wrapper. And here we're going to pass the children. And remember, the children are coming from here. So probably what we can do is just to copy paste this type of children. And there we go. This function app wrapper is going to receive the children here. So we're going to come back here to use this function and to wrap the whole application. Here, I'm going just to write a simple example. I'm going to have a state and a set state, for instance, and I'm going to use my state from React. And this state is going to be hello, for instance. Now I got this set state variable with this use state function that makes it reactive. I want to pass it through my children, through my component tree. So what I need to do is to return down there my app context in here. We created this context and we want to pass this state as a value. So I'm going to type app context in here and I'm going just to pass like this inside my app context, my children. All right, but here what I need to specify, that it's not simply the context up here, create context here, and app context, especially here, down there as a component, need to be passed as a provider. So here I type provider, and provider is waiting for what? It's waiting for a value. And you understood that the value is actually my state up there. So there we go. We've got our context provider with our state down there. Our function is ready to be used. So we are going to continue in this very simple example. Down there, I need to have a function that I'm going to call everywhere I need the context. Because here, it's not the only step. We can't pass just this value and it's going to work. I need to have a function for that. So I'm going to export function, and this is the last step. Use app context, for instance. And inside here, I'm going to return what? I'm going just first to import my use context function that is going to receive, you understood, the context created here. So I can type use context, and then I can pass my app context. And then we are ready. So up here, we see that we've got an error, expected 1 argument, but got 0. An argument for default value was not provided. So here we've got an example. We see that the default value, and here I'm passing the state. So here I got a string. The default value that I would have here, for instance, would be hello. However, I think you're likely to use more like an object with a full state inside of it in this example. So what we would have is an object with hello, and here we're gonna have hello world. So suddenly the value got a problem. We say that it's not assignable to the type string because we didn't specify any type here. As a TypeScript file, we would need to pass a type to the state and how the state is going to look like. Here at first, I'm just going to do this. Of course, if you want to pass a type context, what you would do is to pass your type here, context, and to define your context and say here it's a context type, etc., etc. Okay? So we're going to see that probably later in the TypeScript lessons. But here, there we go. We've got our context that has been passed. The last step is now to wrap our whole application with this context. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to come back here and I'm going to import from where here, and I can say from my context, I'm going to import my app wrapper, and then I want to pass actually my app wrapper down there, and I can put, instead of my div, I'm going to put my children, and I'm going to remove this. And there we go. The context that we created in here has been distributed to all the children of the application. But if you really follow all my courses, you should understand that here there's a problem. The problem is that we are using user state in a server component, which is not possible. So what I need to do is to turn this context as a use client here on the top, and we should be good. Now let's test if this context is going to work. I'm on my page home and I'm going to actually turn it into a client component. So here I got my use client, and what I'm going to do, I'm going to call the context. So if I get back here in my context, remember we got this use app context that I can call everywhere because now I'm injecting the context. So I'm going to go down in here and I'm going just to type here use app context, and we've got it in here. I'm going to type enter, and we see that we import the use app context from the context folder we created. What I can do immediately is to deconstruct my use app context function that I'm calling. And here, remember, we've got what? We've got this hello that is going to give me the word world. So here I'm going to use hello, and I can go down and I can see if hello is going to be triggered. Here, it's really simple to understand. We call our use app function from the context, and then we got hello. And when I come back, I got world that is just here. Okay, let's come back to our context. Let's remove the type and just put, for this example, any type with undefined. And let's just remove this state, and let's put instead a name and a set name. And inside this set name, I'm just going to put Guillaume, for instance. And I would like to pass also the function set name, because probably I would like to change Guillaume. So what I can do here is just to put an object with name and set name. Does it work like this? Let's find out. So we just pass the value here to change the user state. So I'm going to come back here inside my use app context, and I don't have hello now. I got name. When I come back, it's fine. I got my name. But what I'm going to use set name also, And let's just put that into a span. And next to it, I want to create a button. And in this button, actually, which will be called change name. So I'm going to put some space between them to get some clearness. There we go. I want to say that every time that I click on change name, I want to set another name. So remember, we got actually up there our function set name, and we want to put as a name Kevin, for instance. So I'm going to save that, and we're going to look if it works. So if I go here and I click on change name, we've got Kevin in here that appears. So we see that we can export actually our set name, our function also, and we can use it in real time and change the context directly from my page here with the function set name. In this quick lesson, I showed you how to create a context. It's basically in 3 steps. We create our context, then we create a wrapper, then we create the function to use the context. In our layout, we wrap our children with this context. And inside your page, you call your function useAppContext in here, that is coming actually from the context to get all the state of your context, as well as the function to change or mutate your state. If you want to store some data inside your Next.js application and have a state that is available everywhere into your app, this is the video you need. Previously, we saw that we can create a context and store some data locally. However, we would like here to have another solution, and that could be a store. A lot of options are existing for React, such as Redux, but today I'm going to show you a store that I really like and that is really known online, which is called Zustand. Zustand, it's a package that has a lot of success, we can see here on the top, and it's basically a store that you can create, really light, really simple to use inside your Next.js application, and you can do a lot of stuff with it. So what we're going to do, we are going to install Zustand inside our Next.js application. And once it's done, we are going to set up our store. So I'm going to launch again my application, and then it's done. And if I go down a little bit, we can see that down there we got here a store that is created. So I'm going to get back to my application, and on my source folder, I'm going to create a store. And inside this store, I'm going to use actually a TypeScript file to create a user store, which will be for the current user. So we see here that we can use first create from Zustand, and then we can create here our user store. So to do that, I'm going to type const user store, which will be actually create from Zustand that will be used. And inside we see that we've got a callback function with a set that is returning to us an object. So what I'm going to do here is just to create a fake user for now, which will be with a full name, and inside it's going to be Guillaume, and there we go. And here we see that it's just a local file, or it could be used directly inside your component. But me, I want to export my current store. So there we go. I got my user here. Now what I want to do, I want to show it directly inside my page, which I got here, my main page. And what I can do to do that is to create here a variable called user, and I'm going to use actually my user store. So to do that, I need to import here my user store, okay, directly from where I just created actually my store slash user, and there we go. Then once it's done, what I need to do here is basically to return the state. So here also we've got a callback function that is going to return for us the state.user. So here my state doesn't get any type for now, so I'm just going to put that. And what I want to display in here, it's my user.fullname. So with that, we're going to see inside our application if it works. And if I update and I zoom a little bit, there we go, we've got our state directly from the store. Okay, so now that is done, what I would like to have is a function that is able to update actually this user full name. So back in my store, I can create a function called save user or update user. Let's call it update user. And this function is going to actually use the method that we got up here, which is the method set. And set is a function that is going to take a state again as a parameter and will return a new value, okay, for the user. So the thing is that here I got an object called user and inside I got a key full name. And I need to pass an argument to this update user because here what I'm going to do after that, I'm going to create my input. Well, I can actually do it now. So here I can put my p inside my user.fullname, okay. And then after what I can do is to create an input of type text, which basically here what I can do exactly is to say that on change I'm going to call a function and this function is going to be my update here. So what I want to pass here is a new user. Let's say that is going to be new user of type any. And I want to merge actually the existing user. So what I can do is to use the spread operator using state.user, and inside here I can also merge the new user. So what it's going to do here, it's going to keep the existing state, but if I got something changing, it's going to be merged in here. Okay, so now I got this. What I can do is to get exactly the same, and again we're going to do exactly like what we did for the variable on the top, and we're going to use the function update. First, I'm going to add some border to it to see the input. There we go. And here I'm going to type a new name, which would be Kevin. So what I want to do with this e.target.value is to basically update the user. But be safe, here I got user.fullname. So what I want to do here is just to pass full name e.target.value, and my function here is going to respect any other data that could be in this user previously. So I'm going to get back, okay, I'm going to come back, and if I type Kevin, we see that we've got full name that has been updated. So if you want to update an array or anything else, it would be always the same. You would have to do the operation inside the store. But we see that here the store is available directly. It's really easy to use. Zustand is very light, very simple, and we've got the right data at the right time. This is great. Can you fetch from your store? Absolutely. Let's write just an example. Let's say that you would like to fetch the user. Well, you can definitely create an asynchronous function to fetch your user, then to set your user. So what you would do is, for instance, here, await, okay, fetch, and here you would go to your API and your user, and whatever would be this user, whatever you would like to do just after, what you can do is directly to set then your user instead inside here your application. So basically, if you got some steps before, what you can do here is to await and get your response.json. And then when you got, actually we can call it fetch user to be more clear. When you got your user, you can definitely do it. So you can definitely fetch your user directly from the store. This is not something that I do often. I prefer to have everything in my view for a lot of reasons, for state or loading reasons. But you can definitely do this if you need to. Another thing, probably you would like to subscribe to the store to interact with some other function that is outside of the store. So you would do a subscribe. So let's say that you would have a sub that would be here, and you would like to subscribe to the user store. You would use simply subscribe, and here you would do all your operation inside of it. So just let's say that you would have a console log, it's on the documentation, and then you would call your sub just after. You could have your action in here. Here you can do also everything else that you want to do, just trigger another function, etc., etc. It's totally doable. Once the user store would have changed its state, it would trigger this other function. There are many stores that you can use with Next.js 13. Zustand is one of the best because for me it's the lightest, the easiest to set up, the more readable, and at the same time we clearly understand quickly how the store is working. We don't get a lot of lines of code, a lot of setup to do at the beginning. I let you go to read the documentation, I let you go use it and make your own opinion. But for me, when I want to set up a Next.js 13 application and I need to get a store in some situations, I always use Zustand. Let's see what are server actions and why to use them. Server components were introduced in 2020 by the React.js team. It's a different concept from the server actions. Basically, server components were introduced to help to gain user experience, maintainability, and performance cost. Server actions on their side are built on React actions and are always executed on the server side, both in mobile and web. So why to use server actions? Well, you use server actions if you want to avoid the manual creation of API endpoints. These functions, they are asynchronous server functions. They can be called directly from your components. So let's give an example. I got an application running right now, and I got on my main page here a function called savePost. And I got my form, and my form triggers an action called savePost when I click on the button here of type submit, here submit. And I got two inputs, one for the text and one for the title. So here I can type this is my title and here this is the content of my post. All right. And when I'm going to click on submit, it's going to trigger this function savePost. And the first thing that we see in this function is that we got a flag use server. This is how you declare that this function will be actually a server action here. So here we catch the title from the form, then the description, and then here for the demonstration, I call one of my endpoints. Of course, here I could call any endpoint that I want. I'm passing the method post, even if it's going to be a post by default. I'm passing actually the body, and I don't want to keep the cache, so I spend here on cache, no cache. So if I go to my endpoint that I'm calling, here I got a list of posts, which only one post, and on the endpoint post that I got, I'm just pushing the new post. So it means that here, if I click on submit, it's supposed to add the post to my list up here. And in my code, if you look very well, I got in my response a console log post. So I open my console, I'm going to get back in here, and I'm going to submit here my post. And here on the client side, nothing happens. It's normal because here I have a server action triggered. But if I come back, here I got the console log with the existing post and the post that has been created on the fly with the UUID generated by the package UUID. So here we see that we saved actually the new post. So here I'm going to put this is my title and this is my content too. And we see that we added into the list of the post the new post. If we look closely at the code, we can see that we created a server action that has been triggered actually by the action here. And this function never happened on the client side. It's all rendered on the server side. So we can use actually server actions to create direct endpoints that we can call like this to actually trigger some action to fetch or to send or post some data to any endpoint. The most common case of a server action would be to write directly into a database. For that, you wouldn't need to create an endpoint inside your API to perform the action. The only thing that you would do is just to create your server actions directly from the component. So server actions really helps you to avoid using the API and it helps you also to stay on the server side. A last thing, if you would like to use the client here, after that you would not be able to use the server just after. What you would do is to just take this function and put it into another file externally, and you would just call back actually your file, your hook, directly here inside your client component. Server actions in Next.js 13 helps you to execute server-side function. You would like to use server actions when you want to avoid the manual creation of API endpoints and when you want to define asynchronous server functions. They are always executed on the server, even if we are on mobile or on web. And these actions can be defined within the server component and invoked from the server component.